Who'd you see across?
It's 6 o'clock already.
Yeah, we're not here yet.
Charge train.
The October 24th, 2022 regular Wasilla City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, council, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business to attend to during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you're participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to all attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located directly in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Here.
Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Velock.
Here.
And Councilmember Rubeo.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor. All council members are present and here with us in council chambers.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Gray, you lead us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Are there changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda will stand as presented. Is there objection? No objection, so it will stand. We are now at special orders of the day. Madam Clerk is going to administer the oath of office to incoming council members Rubeo and Velock.
Come forward, maybe stand over here. And Alina, I'll give that to you. How about we stand at the, and Miss Nikki, how about over there? And then if you want to just raise your hand, repeat after me. I, insert your names.
Nikki Velock.
Alina. Having been duly elected as an official of the city of Wasilla.
We repeat, okay. Having been duly elected as an official of the city of Wasilla,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
and the Wasilla Municipal Code,
and the Wasilla Municipal Code.
and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as council member
discharge my duties as council member
for the city of Wasilla
for the city of Wasilla
to
to
the best of my ability, so help me God.
the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Did anyone take a picture?
Congratulations, Nick. Congratulations.
I will now read the proclamation honoring Veterans Day. City of Wasilla Proclamation honoring Veterans Day. Whereas our great nation was founded on the belief that all Americans are created equal, that all Americans are guaranteed the inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed legislation proclaiming every November 11th as a day to honor all veterans of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas on Veterans Day, we honor the men and women who have answered the call to duty, selflessly sacrificing to serve our country and protect the rights of all Americans. And whereas Alaska joins the rest of our nation in recognizing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who have valiantly defended American values throughout our country's history. And whereas we remember all who have given their lives in defense of freedom, and we promise to honor their memory, never taking our freedoms for granted. And whereas we thank our active duty military, reserve, and Alaska National Guard service members who serve to defend our nation's founding ideals, protecting the innocent and liberating the oppressed from tyranny and terror. And whereas today we take the opportunity to show gratitude to our veterans and their family members who call Alaska home, as well as the men and women still serving in the armed forces around the globe. And whereas we are grateful for the efforts, the sacrifices, and the dedication to duty of our veterans and the men and women currently serving in the armed forces. Now therefore I, Glenda D. Ledford, Mayor of the City of Wasilla, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2022 as Veterans Day in Wasilla, and ask all to join me in recognizing our veterans and honoring their faithful service to our state and our nation. Dated this 24th day of October 2022. Before we move to commission and agency reports, I'd like to call a 10-minute recess. There are cupcakes and coffee in the conference room in honor of incoming council members Rubeo and Velock. Council, if there are any objection to taking a 10-minute recess? Hearing none, we are in recess until 6:16 p.m. Unless there is objection from the council, we are moving the Wasilla High School report up to this time because he has to be somewhere. So, if you would come up and give your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Ledford.
Please state your name.
Good evening, Mayor Ledford and members of the council. My name is Quinlan Shackwell, and I am here representing Wasilla High School. Wasilla High School has had a wonderful fall with the entire boys cross-country team making it to state. Wasilla football had a good season, beating Palmer at the Potato Bowl. WHS students and staff are excited to be in the second quarter of the school. This brings different activities and sports. Wrestling has started with the first trip of the season to Valdez this past weekend. Volleyball is in full swing with regionals coming up next week, and swim and dive regions are this weekend. On Friday, October 7th, members of the Matsu delegation, Representative McCabe, Senator Hughes, and Representative Tilton toured WHS's NC3 programs in fire science. Students showcased their talents and represented Warrior Nation well. We have a Chief Wasilla statue update. The concrete has been poured and a concrete river with 5 species of Alaska salmon stamped into the cement. The statue will be revealed in May of 2023. We are excited to host the Alaska Association of Student Governments, known as ASAG Conference, this weekend at the Menard Center. We will host nearly 400 students and advisors from around the state. We are so grateful for the discount the city gave us on running the Menard Center. We couldn't have made this happen without you. Thank you again for your time. Do you have any questions?
Hearing none, you're free to go.
Thank you, guys.
Warming up, somewhere to be.
No. Calm down over there. We will now move on to the Airport Advisory Commission. Director Shaw.
Looks like my
Test.
battery died. Sir?
Menard Center pulls us through.
Its battery's dead. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last Thursday, we had the commission meeting. There was a bit of discussion through the meeting. Some of the things that were covered were the meeting schedule. The commission would like to meet more often than quarterly. We'll be putting together the oncoming schedule to bring before the city council to have monthly meetings from now on. There was discussion about lease rates. We're going to be bringing back some suggestions on possible lease rate changes as the commission wants to look at raising some revenue, but being cognizant of the users and where Wasilla stands currently and regionally with lease rates. There was discussion about some theft of some jet fuel and discussion about airplane movement on taxiways, and so that was a good topic to bring up. There's also some support for the master plan that's underway right now. There'll be a special meeting to address some Open Meetings Act issues about the resolution of support that they'd like to bring towards the commission. So we'll be putting together a special meeting time for that so that we can address that with the city clerk's guidance. We heard from about 4 members of the public about projects or issues that were important to them. And there was also discussion about planning for the upcoming air show. Forgive me, I can't remember what it's called, but Wings Over Wasilla, thank you. So there's discussion about planning for that. And it was my first meeting, so it was kind of a whirlwind, and that's my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Director Shaw? Hearing none. Next, we'll hear from Deputy Administrator Nygaard on the Planning Commission, and followed by the Landscape Standards Review Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Planning Commission did meet on October 11th. It was very short and robust. They approved the application for a large toy storage unit that's going to go up by Home Depot. That's 22,000 square foot with 24 condo garage units. And so that was approved and they're well on their way. They will meet again November 3rd unless the commission wants to change it to the 15th. They did inquire about the tunnel. They wanted to get an update from the tunnel, so planning is working on giving them an update at the next meeting. And then I'll just segue into landscaping. That's under planning as well. Landscape Committee will meet again on November 14th. That will be their last meeting. They've been reviewing Title 16. There's been a lot of engagement, a lot of conversations. They're considering costs and types of landscape materials, and they're doing a very deep dive into the weeds. So if anybody would like to join them on November 14th and learn everything you've ever wanted to know about trees or bushes, please be our guest. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Nygaard. So for the Planning Commission in the future, could you please include the permit information and enforcement log with this? That would be handy to know, from the council standpoint, what permits are being granted or being turned down, because it includes administrative approvals as well as those things that the Planning Commission does. And on the Landscape Review Committee, you mentioned that the 14th will be the last meeting, but looking at the notes here, there's really no discussion of any proposed legislation or ordinance that they're going to bring forward. So it's the first time they're going to see it, and the only time they're going to see it is on the 14th. Is that kind of where this is headed?
That will be their last meeting, and then the revisions or suggestions will be revised with an anticipation that they would bring you something to look at in January.
But if it's their last meeting, how are they going to agree on the revisions once the staff does that?
That is a very good question.
Actually, through, if I may, sorry, I don't mean to, through the chair to Councilmember Graham. So the resolution establishing the Landscape Standards Review Committee, they are going to bring their recommendation to the Planning Commission. And then the Planning Commission will bring it up if they so choose to council.
Okay, thank you.
So myself, realistically, I'm thinking maybe spring, early summer.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nygaard.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
question for Ms. Nygaard. Actually, more of a comment, I should say. In the last 2 months in my stumping for people, I've come across 2 developers that are really complaining about the overall costs of such a landscaping. Within the recommendations coming forth, are we planning on putting a cap, cost cap on the ordinance in terms of like percentage of the change or the building structure or the development project?
So I have not heard of a cap, but I do know that these cost concerns are at the forefront of most of the conversations that are happening. Availability and cost, and the quantity that's required. So those are definitely the root of most of the conversations. But I don't know if they have decided to do a cap or a percentage at this time. It's still it's very fluid with all the different solutions that they can have. But it is definitely a concern, and we hear it here, we hear it out and about as well.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions, our last report this evening is from the Alaska Energy Authority on the electric vehicles infrastructure plan.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Taylor Asher. I work for the Alaska Energy Authority, which is the state energy office. I just wanted to give you guys an update on the work that we've been doing as it relates to electric vehicles, because it seems that there's a lot of people who don't realize that it's like my full-time job, and there's 4 of us that work on it full-time at AEA. So when I started about 4 years ago, there was nobody working on this stuff. But recently, when the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act passed, the state of Alaska was allocated about $52 million to install charging stations. So we recently put together this plan that was a very quick turnaround, was about 60 days for us to put together a plan, secure a contractor, and get approved by the Federal Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. That plan will be updated every year for the next 5 years, so those funds are going to be rolled out throughout that time. The plan was approved, and it's important to Wasilla because it is along our corridor. So the plan had a lot of strings attached through the federal government. The first is that our phased approach needs to start with Anchorage to Fairbanks. We're going to be installing charging stations every 50 miles at most, and so likely this probably January is my guesstimate, is when we're going to be going out to look for site hosts. So Wasilla is going to be obviously a very important location. The funds are going to cover up to 80% of the site costs, and then we're going to be looking for a 20% match that's likely going to be coming from a private entity or a site host. We do have experience in this realm already. AEA has used Volkswagen settlement funds to install charging stations along the highway. Those were level 3 charging stations, so try to make this quick, but a crash course is essentially a fast charging station ranges from 50 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. The ones that the state of Alaska has currently are 50 kW. That will charge an electric vehicle from empty to full in about an hour. The charging stations that are required through this program are much larger and much more expensive. We did ask for exceptions, however, the federal government basically said follow rules the first time around. If you have issues implementing the plan, then we can try again next year and ask for exceptions if we need them. So each site will require 4 charging stations. Each charging station will need to be 150 kW. This means that these charging station locations are going to be about $1 million. The charging stations will need to be located within 1 mile of the corridor, so 1 mile basically of the Parks Highway for your guys' reference. Most of the interest that we have seen to date has been from private entities, but anybody can be a site host.
Madam Mayor, could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Thanks for coming to present from AEA. I appreciate that. I guess my question is such that, as you look at accommodating electric vehicles, the electric vehicles that are normal passenger vehicles, trucks, buses, and the thought of that, how many Alaskans do you figure actually have electric cars? Have you calculated that out in the sense of how many are actually going to have those electric cars coming to recharge at, what did you say, once every 10 miles?
Every
In order
50
to get,
miles.
Okay, to get from Anchorage to Fairbanks. I personally don't have an electric vehicle. I don't want one, but have you calculated that out at all?
Yes, absolutely. So that's definitely something that we're tracking through the DMV. Right now, Alaska has one of the earliest markets in the country, so we have about 1,500 EVs. A third of those EVs are in Southeast, particularly Juneau and Sitka. It makes sense. They don't have the same climate. Their climate is warmer. They don't have range anxiety. They have limited road system. They can also get EVs that are used, so cheaper out of Seattle. So they don't have the same concerns that we have. AEA started getting into the EV world with the Volkswagen settlement funds. When we put together that plan back in 2017, the public submitted comments and suggested that we put the maximum amount via the settlement, which was 1.5 million, towards charging stations. And it's definitely a chicken and egg situation. It's, do you build the charging stations first, or people don't want to buy an EV because there's no charging stations, but people don't want to invest in a charging station as a business owner because there's a very limited number of EVs. So it's definitely a challenge. But the funds that I'm speaking of this evening are formula funds, so the state is going to get them regardless. If we don't get them, then somebody else will. And that's what the federal government had indicated. All 50 states plus DC and Puerto Rico, those were the eligible entities for putting these plans together, and all states submitted on time and were all approved.
Sure, and again, do you have a calculated number of how many vehicles you anticipate that are electric traveling from Anchorage to Fairbanks, or trucks or whatever?
Okay, so my apologies. So 1,500 EVs approximately. The number of vehicles that are charging from Anchorage to Fairbanks along that corridor, we do have that number. I don't have that in front of me. We have partnered with the state DOT to put together this plan, and that's something that they track on a regular basis. The corridor was suggested and qualified by the DOT, not by AEA. So, for instance, 3 years ago when we were first talking about this, our EV program manager at the time was going to recommend Anchorage south to Homer, but the DOT recommended the corridor from Anchorage to Fairbanks. So, number of actual vehicles that are charging and going to use those charging stations, I don't know, but I know that there's about 1,000 currently, and they all want to see charging stations.
Thank you.
Yep. So like I said, the plan was put together in a very short amount of time, about 60 days for our team. We did go through a public engagement process, and we will continue to do that as we continue to mold the plan. So we did receive, I'm sorry, I didn't mention this past slide, but we did receive comments from the state, which people can still submit comments on any time that you'd want through our website, but this is a heat map of where we received the most engagement. So it is kind of interesting, just a fun map to look at and see that not only are we receiving comments obviously in the hubs, but we're getting a lot of interest in rural Alaska as well. So as we continue to update this plan on a regular basis, I'm doing public engagement. I gave this presentation, I think, 5 times last week, and always looking for opportunities to make sure we're educating people about what the state is doing and how we're spending this money. And then as we take in the comments, then we adjust the plan. If we do not adjust the plan based on the comment, then we have an appendix at the end that tells you why we did not, we took your comment into consideration and why we didn't follow through with what you had suggested. So there's a phased approach. What's important to you guys here in Wasilla is that it is along the corridor, so the funding will be rolled out in the first 2 years from Anchorage to Fairbanks. After that, then we'll be going to other parts of the state, so looking at the rest of the road system and southeast along the Marine Highway system, and then out to rural Alaska and other destination chargers. But we can't start using the funds in other parts of the state until the corridor is built out. So the federal government will need to essentially give us the green light that we do have charging stations every 50 miles. They are all 4 chargers at 150 kW, and they're all within a 1 mile of the highway. So not only is it important for everybody in this room, but it's also important for the rest of the state for us to build out this corridor, because when I give this presentation along the corridor, everybody's yay excited, we're getting the charging stations first. But when I give the presentation in Southeast, people throw popcorn at me. So these are the locations that we're hoping to install charging stations. What we did last time, which is the same approach we're going to take this time, is essentially open up an application period so that potential site hosts will be competing against each other within their local area. So somebody in Wasilla will not be competing against somebody in Anchorage, for example. Which means that you'll probably, what we saw last time, which was about three years ago, along the entire corridor we had 23 applications. So any one area wouldn't have, in the past, didn't have more than 3 applications. So we will put together a set of criteria that will go out for a 30-day public comment period, in which people can provide feedback on if we're citing them properly. So for example, right now, you can find in our plan on our website that we are saying that we want them to have cell phone reception, we want them to have proper lighting, safety considerations, we want them to be at a location that makes sense so that when somebody is parked charging for half an hour, maybe there's a coffee shop or a restaurant or a walk or something that they can do. So just getting feedback from the public on if that is the best way to cite them.
Ms. Asher?
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So, you said you're not gonna look at more than 3 applications from any one place. Well, here in Wasilla, we have about 80,000 cars a day that go through town. Would AEA look at the possibility of putting 2 charging stations in Wasilla to handle the volume of traffic, or what's the consideration there?
So I'll clarify. The 3 applications, we will consider as many applications as we receive for that one area, just to give folks a feel of how competitive or not competitive it may be, is why I mentioned the 3 number, because that just is typically what we're expecting, but we might receive 15 applications from Wasilla. Right now, the plan is written per the guidelines, which say we have 1 site host with 4 charging stations. We submitted comments to the federal government asking if we could have those, instead of having four charging stations at one, say, bookshop, for example, that we could spread those out and have 4 chargers at 4 different locations within that same community. The federal government is still working on the proposed rulemaking. We have not received that yet. We had a meeting with them last week and said, hey, we asked this question 3 months ago, and they said, we'll get back to you. So we don't have information on that yet, but that would make a lot more sense for the market as it stands currently in Alaska.
Thank you.
Yes. There will be 1 exception that we asked for from the Denali Park to Cantwell. Obviously, that's greater than 50 miles, and there is not any electrical infrastructure. So that's the 1 exception that we did have approved by the federal government at this point. I do want to just continue to say that as the plan develops every year and we update it every year, things might change as we learn. Like I said, when I started 4 years ago, we didn't have anybody working on EVs, and now we have 4 people almost full time. Not super relevant to you guys, but again, just kind of honing in the fact that we're working on the corridor from Anchorage to Fairbanks first before we're able to spend money anywhere else in the state. As a few of you have mentioned, there are obviously considerations. The market in Alaska is not as nearly as developed as other locations. We are very well aware of that. We began working on EVs before this $52 million became available, and we had a lot more issues before when there were more concerns with the utilities. So climate is a consideration. We're partnering with Alaska Center for Energy and Power to do research and provide public education on how the charging stations as well as the EVs are working throughout the state. Any charging station, Cantwell and north, is required to be rated at a temperature of at least 40 below. Private investment at 20% match is a large match, so we are aware of that. We are looking into potential other options. The state has received a little bit of funding to help us go after state allocation to help us go after competitive funds, but not indicated that we can use those funds to match the NEVI as of this time. So there are other barriers to EV adoption, and I could talk about this all night, but get my card and we'll talk later. So what I want to kind of wrap it up with is our next step. So once again, anybody can make public comments on our website, email me, call anybody at AEA, and we will get your comments considered. The next step is for us to find an interested site host. Again, Wasilla is going to be a prime location. The first phase will be asking site hostess simply submit basically a very one to 2 page letter of interest that says, hey, I own this business, or I have this location, I have the proper 3-phase power, I'm within a mile of the corridor. And then we'll take those in, we'll do a site visit, we'll drive up here, say, yeah, this is a great site, there's not some crazy, I don't know, watershed there, I have no idea what would prevent us, but something crazy. And then we'll ask people to submit a full application. Last time it was pretty cumbersome, so we have some lessons learned. We're hoping that the application will be less of a burden on potential site hosts before making grant agreements and hoping to start construction next spring. So like I said, I could talk about this all day. I can do an overview of EVs, I can do an overview of the VW settlement, I can do an overview of more in-depth of the NEVI plan, so happy to talk with anybody later or do other presentations. But I know we're out of time, so thank you, I appreciate it, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Brown, has the state considered any kind of incentive program to encourage EV buying?
So the NEVI funds, like I mentioned, will cover 80%. As far as any other incentives, not currently that I'm aware of. Has it gone up to the state level? What we're trying to do is just educate people on the opportunities, and various businesses have different reasons for investing in charging stations, but we're not offering any additional incentive besides the 80% coverage for the grant.
Excuse me, I didn't mean the EV station, I meant incentives for people to buy EV cars.
Oh, to purchase the actual EVs. So that's something that we have looked at our office, and have it's gone as far up as my executive director, but I'm not sure if that it's gone any further than that, but I'm not aware of any incentives for the actual cars as of right now. It is interesting when you start looking into this world that I will say that, Matanuska Electric, for example, I think has different incentives for charging stations at homes. True Gas Electric has it as well. So EA is not the only entity that is working in this space. So I encourage folks to look into other opportunities because there might be some that I'm not aware of.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Escher, for being here. A couple of questions. Number one, it sounds like these charging stations will either be put on public property owned by the city or the borough or on private property, feeding essentially off of a private electrical service. So were people going to be able to like scan their credit card or something like that to charge, for a certain amount of time or a certain percentage, something like that, so the business is not out? And are there rules where they can only charge for the electricity, or can they charge for the use of the service, or how does that work?
So as of right now, they can charge for both. Different stations have different rates depending on their utility, and how the station charges is going to be up to the site host. So we have installed a couple of charging stations at state buildings, and we're charging a per hour basis. I think it's $1.75 at the Atwood building and the Snowden building in Anchorage. But there's a charging station in Healy that I believe is charging like a $10 plug-in fee and then does an energy charge. So the cost to charge is going to be set by the site host.
And then a second question, seems like the rental industry, car rental industry, would be a big player in using this if in Alaska they were to start bringing in electric vehicles. Have you heard anything about what their thoughts are on that? Or?
So we have started to have these sorts of conversations with the industry, especially, mostly before NEVI when we were applying for a lot of different grant applications. We were trying to bring in partners and encourage folks to look into opportunities. As far as any definitive answers or are they making any moves, we haven't heard that yet. But I do recognize that, if they bring in rental cars, they'll be using these. All these charging stations need to be publicly available. So in the past, when we tried to partner with these groups, it was like they wanted to have a charging station at their location, and that would serve their customers. But we need to make sure we're serving the general public and not just a specific group. So depending on their location, it may or may not be a good fit for us to partner with them.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Thanks for being here.
Mr. Johnson?
Madam Mayor, so I am assuming then that you are working with the rural electric associations along the path to actually make sure that they have capacity, because once you get into the rural locations, capacity becomes a real issue. I'm speaking there from experience, where the rural capacity in a number of locations no longer have the capacity to add lines. They're already maxed out in terms of their grid. Mm-hmm. So what work are you doing with these? Because obviously if we're going to be charging EVs, we don't want to get ourselves into the California scenario where we no longer have grid capacity to handle the charging.
Yeah, absolutely. So the utilities are always a part of the conversation. We have a working group that meets quarterly, and we also do technical sessions about every 6 weeks. So the utilities along the road belt are all part of that working group, as well as some utilities from rural Alaska. It's really interesting to see the entities that are really excited about it. So Kotzebue, for example, already has an EV. They also have a Ford Lightning, the truck. They have that on back order. And so I'm not sure about what their capacity is exactly, but we are making sure that we're not just going into locations and installing charging stations without the input from the community. So right now we're working on a grant application through the federal government that is due in like 3 weeks. So it's fine. I'm not losing any sleep, but we do have to work with the utilities as part of the requirements, is making sure that the utilities are involved in siting these locations. And then also just to point out that these requirements of having the 150 kW chargers at 4 at each site for 600 kW are only along the road system. Once we build out the alternate fuel corridor, then we won't have to abide by those same guidelines for the other parts of the state.
Is there any other question?
Mayor?
Ms. Velock?
I'm just curious, does the state give you a EV to practice on or do your research or?
We were actually just talking about that at lunch today. Our executive director said we should get a Tesla. But no, we don't have any vehicles for use at AEA. We don't have any of those, unfortunately. But we have hosted a ride and drive event. And so there was several people who, I think it was I believe it was not a couple months ago, August, but the year before August, we had it at the Diamond Center. We had, I think, 35 different EVs, over 150 people attended, and we got to drive them, and you should definitely test drive an EV. It's very fun. I mean, even if you're not into EVs, they go from like 0 to 60 in like 4.5 seconds, so it's just kind of fun.
Well, I think you guys need to put that in your budget.
I will let my boss know.
Just kidding, everybody. We're not spending state tax dollars on that.
Okay, any other questions from council? Hearing none. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. We are now at public participation. There are 3 ordinances scheduled for public hearing. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the first ordinance.
Thank you. That's ordinance serial number 2233, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by appropriating $400,000 from the general fund balance to fund the community grant program to support nonprofit organizations serving the needs of the Wasilla community.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 22-33 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
I signed up and back, does that matter?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 3 minutes, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Elsbeth Wooden. I do live in Wasilla, but I also have about 25 years working in nonprofits in the valley. And during that time, I got really used to doing things on a budget and making do and begging for donations and going around and probably being a general nuisance at times. But, you know, often in the nonprofit world, that's kind of how you get things done. So hearing about this opportunity for potentially finding some funds that might be available for nonprofits certainly felt like something I could maybe, talk about for a moment. And most of the folks I've worked with, or either as a volunteer or staff, or even now today as a retiree, most of the folks in nonprofits are really good people, and they work really hard. There are a lot of people that volunteer. There are a lot of different funding sources and fundraising opportunities and in-kind donations and auctions and you name it. People are always trying to make it work to the best of their ability with fairly limited, funding. And so I particularly enjoy going to Wasilla Area Senior Center. I've met a wide variety of folks, and I'm going to say that I'm probably more of a liberal, wild and free spirit than most of the people in the room. But, there are some folks that get me, and it's fun to, eat lunch with them and visit, and I meet people that, sometimes I meet people I didn't expect to like, and I like them. And I would like to think that maybe some people turn out to maybe like me more than they thought they were going to. We'll see. That's, kind of a work in progress. But I really like what they do, and when I had hip and knee replacements, they brought, meals to my house. The delivery person was fabulous. They were kind. It was really nice not to have to cook for myself, under those circumstances, and I so appreciated that. Service was offered, and it was offered freely and kindly, and, very, very nice volunteers provided it right to my home. So I do like to do good things for them. I am a very regular silent auction supporter. I baked pumpkin spice brownies for the last event they had. I will support them however I can. But if there's a way to maybe, sort of enhance what they can do with some funds that might be available, I would certainly like to speak highly in support of them. Thank you. 11 seconds.
Mark Ewing, downtown. I was mistaken at the last meeting. I said I was here for 53 years. That won't be true until December, so I wanted to correct that. Anyway, I want to ask that you table this indefinitely. I don't think that this is the right political move for anybody at this point. I want to welcome Wasilla Girl to the council. As a matter of fact, she's got my old seat F. That doesn't mean you're last. It just means you're last alphabetically. I was surprised. I was shocked. I didn't see a bus from Wassy here tonight. Normally when they would come for money, they bring them down in a bus. And we did make mistakes in the past. We gave the Iditarod, Junior Iditarod, $10,000 in hopes that they would stay true to their word and do their restart in Wasilla. Well, that fizzled. The Iditarod also got some money when they moved to Wasilla. We have had the wool pulled over our eyes several times in the past with, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And now they say, well, there's too much traffic on Kinnick Road to run the Iditarod down there at all the driveways. I guess you haven't been to Anchorage, They're not complaining about that. I'm sorry to see that we have, like Mr. Menard brought up, we had a trail dedicated from Wasilla Lake to Lake Lucille that is shut down. And it would have been an asset. Used to have snow machine races start here. We used to have the Junior Iditarod here. We had a lot of activity in this town, and it seems like it's all moved up the road to Willow now. And so I just want you to realize that if I was a banker and loaning money, the first thing I want to do is see your profit and loss. And I don't know how much research was done. It tells me in the docket here, and I see there's 1,000 charities in here, including Palmer and Wasilla, including the volleyball club. But, it is the season of giving, and I think we should all give. But I don't think that it's proper to do in the manner you're proposing right now. And I don't believe all the nonprofits that actually are in the city of Wasilla doing good were notified to apply for this money. So I would ask that you pull it tonight, table it indefinitely, and come back with something that's a little more tangible, something that's more fair. I want to tell you, I appreciate you all sitting here and listening to us. And unfortunately, I do have my notes, so I won't ask for an extra minute. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Danielle Bischoff. I am a resident of the greater Wasilla area, and I'm a taxpayer here in the city. We all know that taxpayers are affected even though we don't vote for you. So to everyone here, Mayor Ledford, council members, staff, and all of the residents that have taken their time to be here tonight, I greatly appreciate it, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on this topic. I've been watching the council, and I've seen what's been going on. I've seen the lively discussion, and I wanted to take it back a step with your permission tonight. Back in June, we had ordinance number 2224, amending the fiscal year 2022 budget by appropriating $300,000 from the general fund balance to support the operations of Wasilla Area Seniors, My House Youth Center, and Vista Rose Senior Housing, sponsored by Mayor Ledford. At that time, there was a lot of support that was voiced for that. There was discussion at that time by the council that they wanted to provide an equal and fair opportunity for all of the local nonprofits. That was why Councilmember Brown brought forward creating this grants policy committee. And I thank Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, Councilmember Velock, City Clerk Newman, and Attorney Wells for their time on this. I would ask that as we think about this and provide our comments, that we speak respectfully to council. You spend your time here, and I appreciate it. So, my personal opinion on it is that we have a lot to do in this city. I did appreciate Finance Director Miller's comments as to how this could be a fiscally responsible method for us to make our dollars go further. I sat before all of you and I defended the budget for Public Works so that we could see things progress forward. You have been fiscally responsible, and I appreciate that. I hope that we can continue to see that, and I hope that we can invest in our people. That would be my goal. We have so many employees around this city that are working their very hardest. And I know that there have been efforts that have been made to reevaluate how some of the structure works, but it needs improvement. These people work very hard for the city, and we need to look at investing back into them to retain them and to retain the work that they're doing. It is in the good of our area, of our city, and I thank you so much for listening to all of the comments that are here tonight and going out into the community and listening to all of your constituents. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor Ledford and council members. My name is Brenda Sheldon. I'm a board member for the Wasilla Area Seniors, and I've served on that board since 2018. And I'm asking for your support of Ordinance 2223. Nonprofits of this community do not give handouts, but instead they give hand-ups. And we are in a very challenging time right now. Inflation is in every sector, and I know you guys all know this. And it's making our seniors ask, what has to be paid, or what will I go without? Medication, food, fuel. At WASI, we are providing over 500 meals a day. 500 meals a day. What reimbursement we do get from the federal government for Meals on Wheels is based on a formula from 2019. Now is the time to approve this ordinance. Most of your community nonprofits provide very basic services, and that is what we do at Wasilla Area Seniors. And we ask that you approve this ordinance to support them, as well as every other nonprofit. We know that their missions are important, and that's what we want to support. So I thank you all for your time that you put toward this council and your commitment and passion toward our seniors. So thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Ledford, council members. My name is Mary Robinson, city resident. Full disclosure, also a part-time temporary employee at the Wasilla Public Library. I want to say that I trust the council. I trust the proper functioning of the system. I respect the process, and I respect those who differ with me. So I want to thank you, whether ordinance serial number 2233 moves forward or dies a quiet death. I want to thank you to the council, the community grant program, all the people that have testified for your hard work. I will reiterate that I believe we should honor Wasilla's past and invest in Wasilla's future. Well, I have a moment, speaking of the past and the future, I really enjoy history, and I dipped into the 8th of October 2007 City Council meeting. And there was an ordinance sponsored by then council members Menard and Ewing appropriating $25,000 from the general fund to WASI under then former Mayor Keller. There was also that same night appropriating almost $700,000 from the general fund balance for payment of the Masters Award in the City of Wasilla versus Gary Lundgren, the eminent domain for what is now known as the Menard Center, but then was known as the Multi-Use Sports Complex. There was also a resident who said that they didn't agree with the federal grant application filed for by the then economic development planner for $450,000 to benefit a company called Meritage Development LLC, which led to a vote of no confidence in June of 2008 against then Mayor Keller. Well, Mayor Repright has his troubles also because we had from the 8th of November 2010 moving forward to 13th December 2010 appropriating $36,000 for WASI. 20 people spoke, and it was evenly divided between people said yes, give WASI money, and roughly the other half said no, they have family, they have church, they have community, or we don't care what happens to them. So apparently, from even as far back as 2007, this has been a lightning rod. So again, I want to thank you for all your hard work, however this ends up. I appreciate the process, and thank you for working as hard as you do. Thanks.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to testify?
Hi, Mayor and City Council. My name is Michelle Sturgeon. I'm an employee at the Children's Place, and I'm employed in a position of a business manager. The Children's Place is a nonprofit here in Wasilla that serves children that have been abused sexually, physically, neglected, and witnessed to violent crimes. We work directly with the Wasilla Police Department to help these kids. I absolutely support that you put this money up for nonprofits. And I support that you do it in a fair manner with a fair application process. So it's not just a select few that get the money, but it's open to all nonprofits that operate in the city of Wasilla. I'm also a taxpayer in the city of Wasilla. I own land here, and my kids go to Wasilla High School, and I've sat at the council meetings a couple times. Big supporter of WASI. And I think this is really important because as an individual that works in this community, pays taxes in this community, has kids in school in this community, I volunteer at WASI for a paint night for their fundraiser with my own salary, my own money, my own supplies, my own materials. So if you have these nonprofits that have people working at nonprofits, volunteering their time, their money, their effort, their materials, that should speak volumes to the city of Wasilla. If I had $400,000, I would absolutely make sure that money went to good hands and touched so many different nonprofits. And I think you guys have a really good opportunity to do that through a fair, good process with good reviews. And I think that's what everybody'd like to see tonight. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I'm very unused to this type of thing. My name's Carol Shea, and I am the founder-director of Alaska Assistance Dogs. We're a 21-year nonprofit that does everything with dogs to help this community. And with 21 years, I could just go like this real quick. Okay, 244. Okay. Access Alaska, Alaska Attachment and Bonding, Alaska Center for Resource, Alaska Children and Family, Catholic Social Services, Co-occurring Disorder, Family Promises, and it goes on for 2 pages. These are the kind of things that we are a little nonprofit that just uses like something like this, golden retrievers, to bring joy and love and calming, especially after COVID, to this community. We've worked in probably 24 of the valley And we're now placing permanent canine therapy dogs in our schools. We've placed one at Swanson Elementary, 2 of them after the earthquake at junior senior high school at Houston. We placed one at Matsu Day School. And in a month and a half, Nancy, one of the administrators, said that one dog changed the whole school, made a family. So what we're doing as a little teeny, we don't charge for any of our services, whether it's a service dog or a therapy dog. I don't take salaries. We have one grant from the wonderful Matsu Health Foundation, and then earlier years, Alaska Mental Health Trust, bless their hearts. And then the permanent fund, Pick, Click, and Give. But I think we're probably the ones that would, the teeny nonprofits that would benefit the most if this passes. And when I was called to say come and talk maybe, again, we probably have changed an awful lot of people's lives. Not me, the dogs. We do golden retrievers. And they go, we take them into these agencies with mental health problem youngsters, 3 to 17-year-olds, and it's just been phenomenal what these dogs do. So if we are to continue, we only run on $15,000, one grant, and then 4,000 to 5,000, 6,000 from Pick, Click, and Give. So if we could have a little more help, I mean, it's not I would take a salary, it's just that I wouldn't have to be paying the extras. I've had to pay for dogs and stuff like that when it didn't work. So I'm on the little teeny end of this whole $400,000 nonprofit conversation, and bless your hearts, you know, what you do. But so there are a few of us out there that aren't huge. That's all I have to say. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify?
Good evening, my name is Ann Gilkenny, I'm a city resident. I applaud you for your out-of-the-box thinking on this and all the work you've done and the generous impulses that are supporting it and promoting it. But I would caution you. I understand your last meeting was kind of historic. 2 former mayors and 3 city council members, and I see there's 4 former city council members out there tonight. Learn from what they tell you. This is really, really dangerous territory. I'm afraid you're being impulsive. Even though you've been working on this since back in June, you now only have less than 6 weeks to complete the process. I'd like to remind you, I've been here before. I'm a life member of WASI. I have asked for money. I've been here at times when WASI members came and said, don't give us any money because we're so poorly managed we don't know where it would go. That was a shock to the council to have people saying, please do not grant us the money that's in your ordinance. But it points to a real serious issue. You really don't know how these organizations are run. I believe everybody has good intentions. Everything was well meant at WASI, and things are working very well right now. But you're not in the position, you're not all auditors. You don't have audited financial statements to look at. This is taxpayer money. This is not what we agreed to be spending money on when we agreed to give you an extra ½ cent. This is not small government. Small government is doing only what government can do. These nonprofits get money through Pick, Click, Give. I donate, I participate, I volunteer. The city should be doing what only the city can do, not what other organizations can be doing. If you're doing what other people can do, whether it's retail or nonprofit, you're not an advocate for small business, small government, nor is it conservative. You've got an item on your agenda a couple steps down from here, $800,000. You can't afford it. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. How great is Ann Kilkenny, huh? I mean, the lady has been here. You want to talk about somebody that's been passionate and been around the watchdog of our city for a long time. She knows what she's talking about because she lives right next to it. And she has been just a wonderful part of this city for such a long time, and is that watchdog that sometimes we don't think about. And again, pertaining to this issue, there is a reason why there are former mayors, former councilmen that take their time, because it's all about our time that we cannot get back. As you get older, it's about your time and not the money. And there's a reason why we're here. We're all, and thank you, I forgot, missed her name, but on the issues with, in the past, donating to WASI, it was a case-to-case basis, and I'm so in favor of that. I think the problem that I have now is the amount of money right now, and where I see the need for the city that these large chunks of change don't come around too often. I mean, not to put you on the spot, Scott, but what could you do with $400,000 at the Menard Center? I mean, there's a lot of great opportunity that is tangible. When you talk to your constituents and the people in the public, they want to see things that they can visibly touch, right? Because they're not aware of the day-to-day monotony of how a city is run. But when you go, hey, the Menard Center, 17 votes. Or you go, the public library, 53 votes. And they can physically look at something going, my tax dollar money goes to that building, that school, that track, that turf at Wasilla High. I mean, these are things that are tangible. When you talk a lump sum of money, we're not talking that these organizations aren't valid. But Ann was absolutely right. We are not auditors. And now we have, I know the pace of government moves very slowly, but the point that I have to reiterate what she said is we're up against it now. Because if we don't finish by the end of the year, we lose it. So you're into that 6-week plan when you've had since June. Anyways, I'm worried that we're rushing through it. Thank you for your time. God bless you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stearns. I am not representing WASI at this point, okay? But I have been on their staff for the last 9 years as an unpaid staff member, okay, as the chaplain there. And I've watched what has happened to the funding in the state of Alaska, okay? When we had money coming in 9 years ago, things were going well, okay? Now, things are not going so well, as in the whole realm of things, you know, money is tight, and I get that. This ordinance here, 2233, is not for WASI per se. It has nothing to do with WASI per se. What it does have is the whole nonprofits that we have in this town. And if anybody would have looked at the ordinance, they would have found out that there has to be probably 100 or 150 listed items, nonprofits that this city could be investing in. It's not just WASI. However, we could use that money, sure. And so could a lot of other nonprofits in this city. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, last week, we've already said that it's in place. Now, what I understand this ordinance is determining how much money is going to be placed to it. It's already been passed last time that the ordinance is out there. All we're looking for this time is how much is there going to be spent on giving to nonprofits. And so that is the key issue tonight. That seems to me the key issue. Not whether we're going to do it, how much we're going to do, and then you guys have to determine, is it an up or down? Are we going to do it or are we not going to do it? Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, for this opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Diane Woodruff, and I am a resident of the city of Wasilla, former council member. I testified against this 2 weeks ago, so I'll try not to be too redundant, but I remain in opposition to this ordinance. I've had a chance to go shopping in the meantime, and I can tell you that inflation is really a thing. And not only are we citizens also paying more for each item, but we're also paying higher sales taxes based on those higher totals. And that's a stretch for a lot of people. But there's folks out there hurting pretty badly with that. And I think that while those who propose this and support this mean well, the reality is that it doesn't seem like a good thing to do, a right thing to do, that while people are struggling, that we're suggesting taking $400,000 of what is ultimately taxpayer money and handing it out to nonprofits. And this is a really long list, and I don't think that we would all value these organizations the same way or suggest that, we'd want to support them all. Those of us who have a little extra, we certainly can and do already donate to a number of the ones on the list. If we have more, we can always donate more. But I don't think it's really fair to ask the same of everybody in town to give up that money. And we've already identified things that are crumbling in our infrastructure, things that we wanted to do years ago and have never found the money to do. It's really not a bad thing to have a rainy day fund because you've already got an item on here that is more than twice that for repairs due to the windstorm last January. It doesn't hurt to have a little money in the bank when things happen. So, that's kind of repetitive from my last speech, but the other piece is, as has been pointed out, we've done this grant thing before. Been there and done that. So we've had the organization that came in and basically demanded that they get their $10,000 that they just assumed would be handed out to them every year. And when they were asked what benefit the citizens got for that, they really couldn't tell us that we were getting anything for that. We've had the organization that used to come in and hand us new spreadsheets about 2 minutes before meetings and tell us that they desperately needed money for one program when it turned out that the reality was that program was not where they were having financial difficulty. They wanted money from us to not address where their real problem was. And that wasn't too great. The other thing is we've seen unintended use of funds, and I don't see any prohibition against paying salaries in this, but we've had the organization where we funded what we thought was going to be another person to help an executive director do more work. And what we found was that the executive director just decided to increase her own salary by that amount. And we didn't get anything for that.
And when in fact, we'll be real quick, but when in fact an audit was done, we found out that a number of things were very irregular in their finances. And as been pointed out before, we really don't have the capacity to properly audit these folks and make sure that money is used the way we think it's going to be. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify?
Good evening, members of city government. I'm Vern Rubright, city resident in the city of Wasilla, taxpayer, back even when we paid property tax in this city. And I'd like to thank Ms. Kilkenny for reminding me at Halloween of nightmares past. Because there's been lots of fights, but I'll try to be as brief as I can. As we are well aware, beginning in January 22 this year, the mayor proposed grants for organizations to my house, Wassian Valley Residential Management, which is Vista Rose, right up on Lucille. There was no evidence that a formal request by these organizations were made on their behalf, so therefore it failed on January 10th. Subsequently, in May and April of 22, these organizations formally asked for money by writing to the mayor's office. This failed 6-0. As you're well aware, you must have all been here. Although it failed, a grant committee was formed, and Ms. Velock and Ms. Sullivan-Leonard were on that, along with the city attorney and the city clerk. In August, the Wasilla City Code, though, was amended to permit these grants, allowing the grants by sidestepping the original grant conditions, which had 13 stringent conditions in them. So if the law didn't permit it, well, we'll just change the law to fit the need. It's the ends means test to me. And, if it don't work, well, let's just change the law. Well, those were in the code for a reason to begin with. And Ms. Velock and Ms. Sullivan-Leonard, then, who was absent for the first vote, but voted no on that second vote, as we're well aware. However, they are now the ones to recommend to the council, and they get to vote on the matter, because it's going to be their recommendations, and that comes out subsequent to this meeting on the 28th sometime, what the criteria is going to be. The committee should well have been disinterested citizens. A task force, if you will, and I'm not a big fan of task force, should have been called in a general vote of the citizens on the matter. This isn't general government business. General government business is infrastructure, police, protection services, and the rest, and we know what it is. No emergency exists, and those that change the law now will decide how this magical need in dollars is distributed. Well, that's an odd way of doing business. There are no rules in place, and those are not to be decided, not in front with the public, as I understand, until a private meeting on the 28th. To adopt a dollar amount actually in the criteria. That's a cart before the horse. And ordinance number 524-010-OC, ignoring section A, the stringent criteria. It just says, hey, if we don't like it, we're just going to go this way. Well, that just kind of nullifies the original ordinance. So, as I recall, there was a lady in this town I dearly loved in my own kind of way, was Pat Jellin, who was Heinrich and Helen Snyder's daughter. And she would often say, when she was sitting right up there and sometimes in the audience, going, what is this? And those of us remember Miss Jellin quite well. She was a dear. But, I mean, the committee was formed in June, but where are the criteria? How are they going to magically appear now in a couple of days from now after this function tonight? That is the cart before the horse. I mean, I started looking really tight around the roads at Weber, potholes right down by the park, right on to Nelson at Lucille, potholes. I'm beginning to see crumbling infrastructure in this town when we were always looking at fresh coats of paint and everything else. I mean, I think it's time to.
Sir, your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think it's time to stick to the business of a small government. Thank you very much.
My name is Christopher George. I'm a Wasilla resident. I'm also a former U.S. Army intelligence analyst with specific training in open source intelligence, which is publicly available information that is not classified. It is with this experience that I spent the last week or so researching the tax records of the nonprofit organizations in and around Wasilla. My research revealed a few key issues, chief among them. First, The three organizations, that'd be My House, WASI, and Valley Residential Services, that have requested grants in the amount of $100,000 each have a collective annual revenue of $7.7 million and collective net assets after liabilities of $14.7 million, WASI accounting for half of those totals. Of the other nonprofits that had posted their taxes, most of them are barely afloat with little to no substantial revenue and next to no assets. Today, I called approximately 24 of those smaller nonprofits, and with the exception of the food bank, none were aware of the grant monies that they may be eligible for. In fact, a few of those nonprofits explained that they have had to pull money out of their own pockets to fund their nonprofit and provide services to this community because they just don't have the money. So I feel that the community grant program, as it is currently scheduled, is ill thought out and rushed. The grant committee had 4 months to draft an application, establish eligibility criteria, and set deadlines. As of the publication of their event calendar, none of these have been decided. Instead, the committee isn't set to make these decisions until not later than this Friday after the council votes on this matter this evening. Unfortunately, this appears to violate the code, the one that was amended this past August, which states in particular, the ordinance implementing a grant program under this section shall include the dollar amount available for the program and the criteria for its award. So, in conclusion, the accelerated application process is inappropriate. The organizations least in need of the grants are best situated to apply. Those that are most in need are unaware of this program. It is my recommendation that the matter be tabled until the details of this program be hammered out and that a full accounting of the true available funds from the city after accounting for any sort of infrastructure repairs be brought to the public so that we can all see how much money there really is to donate to this grant program. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Diane Keller and I live in the city. And this is not about what I originally thought was CARES Act money. This is about Wasilla sales tax money. Because after we did all the research and after the deputy or the finance director informed us that it was not CARES Act money, that this is actual City of Wasilla tax dollars. And I want to point out that I don't believe that this is in accordance with the code that two of you just swore to uphold. It's not in accordance with 5.02.020 that the city must have a solid financial condition at all times. Also, in that same section, the service level needs to be solvency. I live on a road that was just paved. Mayor Glenda, why did I not get any, we didn't get any, it was always done in the past where we would get,
Notification.
no, not the notification, but the driveway, the driveway, the culverts. There's no culverts. So the scope of the services is being reduced, and I was told it's because we can't afford it. If we can't afford to put culverts when we're doing roads, we shouldn't be giving away money. Because that's a very, very necessary thing for roads. Talk to any engineer and they'll back me up. Also, the code at 5.020 says that the adherence to the highest accounting and management practices as set forth by the governor, by the Government Finance Officers Association and standard financial reporting and budgeting. That means that you should be getting quarterly reports from these entities if you're going to do this. How are you going to help them? How are you going to even know if they need help if you're not even getting quarterly financial reports? Also, 5.02030 says new programs and services must also be submitted as budgetary increments requiring detailed justification. New programs and services will be evaluated on the same basis as program expansion plus an analysis for long-term funding fiscal impacts. This is one time. This does not adhere to the code. So I wonder, why are there no quarterly reports? Why is this not a reimbursement? Every other people that have come up here and talked about things that they want the city to help them with, it was all reimbursement programs. So why are we talking about just giving away money with no standards at all? Where's the oversight and the controls for this CPG? My biggest question is, who provides technical assistance to these recipients? And there doesn't seem to be any restrictions on for parties or alcohol or other frivolous spending. And it looks to me like this is what the council wants. There's no administrative costs that have been identified. There's no consideration to the impact of staff. It was done during the election cycle, and now it's gonna fall to the finance people during their budgetary, or their, when they're trying to complete their budget. So this is a council want, and I ask you to just kill this thing. It's a bad idea. So many people that disagreed in the past are up here today agreeing on this one issue. You should take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify at this time? Seeing none, then we will call, the public hearing is closed. And we will, is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2223?
Madam Mayor? Oh, no, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I move ordinance serial number 22-33.
Is there a second?
Councilman Brown, second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Brown to adopt ordinance serial number 2223. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Sullivan Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everybody who's come here today. I do appreciate the input and the history, because I am part of that history. But wanted to just give a quick overview. In June, council did meet and we did discuss the formation of a community grant program due to the fact that there was a request for funding that had no ordinance, or excuse me, code to follow that up. And within those discussions, it was part of our general discussion was such that we didn't want this during the budget process. The grant oversee should be for all nonprofits and not just for a select few. And then also we looked to see, how the committee would be formed, what the operations would be for this particular committee, and what we wanted to see for results. So when you look through that process, we are exactly where we're supposed to be within the guidelines of what council had approved and what our committee had been working on with legal counsel, with our parliamentarian, Jamie, and financial with Joan Miller. So we've tried to look at every aspect we could with regard to how the code ordinance looked prior, how we could implement a change in the code for a non-reoccurring grant. Much of the discussion was such that we did not want to have grants every single year. We looked to see how we could then have the change in code to implement that. That's why we're here today to discuss funding for consideration for nonprofits to apply. So when you look at some of these funds, the funds are coming from a CARES Act offset. The CARES Act offset is about $3.1 million. That has nothing to do with the $28 million in undesignated funds that truly the council could utilize as they see fit. These funds are very specific. They're specific because the CARES Act funds were utilized for police, for personnel, for payroll. And with that offset then, the city did have $3.1 million. $400,000 is not the full kitty, if you will. So we discussed the amount, we discussed the vulnerable in our community in the sense that there are many that have specific needs. I mean, you see it at the gas pump when you're paying $5.29 a gallon. You see families that are going to food bank more and more so that they can have food in their fridge. And so that was really the mission of this community grant program. So today we're looking at approving those funds. And doing it today allows this one-time grant process to proceed to its finish. We are about 3/4 of the way completed with this particular process, and we are hoping to be done by the end of the year. Again, we didn't want to have it in the budget process because, quite honestly, when the budget comes in February, March, April, I don't want to give out grants. This is a one-time piece. And again, it's an offset from CARES Act funds that can very readily be used, not only for these grants, but they may be used for infrastructure projects as well. And I know that even our infrastructure projects are well funded. There's a method and a system for how we're paving roads and how we're doing our infrastructure throughout the city. So I know we're well on track on that. Financially speaking, I know the city is very healthy. We have, by code, 50 to 60% in reserve. And again, that's very, very healthy. So anyway, I ask for council's consideration on this and hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor, I move to postpone the motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2233 indefinitely.
Second that motion.
Yes. Madam Clerk.
Mayor, I second.
Madam Clerk.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to object, Madam Mayor. I want reasoning on this.
There's a motion on the table.
Right. Word in order.
The clerk will take care of this.
Through the chair, to the council, to everyone here. So what a motion, so the motion is in order. What a motion to postpone indefinitely does, the effect of the motion to postpone indefinitely is to kill the main motion. So the main motion was 2233 without having to take a direct vote on it. It allows the council to not take a position on the main motion without having to vote it down. Because the motion to postpone indefinitely is used to kill the main motion, relaxed debate rules apply, and debate can cover the merits of the main motion. The motion is debatable but not amendable. So what the council is free to do now is to debate the motion to postpone indefinitely, as well as the main motion to adopt. And once we get to a vote, if the council votes in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely, ordinance 2233 dies without the council having to take a direct vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we are on to the discussion on the motion to table or postpone.
Postpone indefinitely, and again, debate, relaxed debate rules apply, so the council is free to debate the merits of the postpone indefinitely, as well as the merits of the ordinance itself, and that is directly out of research for Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for everybody who testified both in favor and against this. And I look at the nonprofits, particularly WASI, as a very valuable asset within the community. I know that WASI does an awful lot for our community. There's no question about that. I support WASI in every other way. I support other nonprofits in the same way. However, my general conviction has been, and Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, you know that I have voted against this consistently from day one. My position has not changed. I do not believe, ideologically, that public money should be given to private organizations. It is just against my ideological code, if you will. Now, the one exception, of course, would be as if we were to run this as a referendum in the general public, and the general public through a referendum said yes, then of course the public has spoken. But in this particular case, that's not the case. Now, as far as the COVID money goes, the COVID money, according to the finance director, was 100% spent. So it's what we're really looking at then is a budget windfall due to the COVID funding. So in essence, this is public money. This is Wasilla's funding money. Now, we're in a unique position right now. I see the police chief down there. We have a police contract in place. It's interesting that the police street people know that we've got this funding thing, and the couple that I have talked to said, well, hold it, we're giving money away, and yet the company or the Wasilla is acting as if we don't have any more money to increase our contract. That's the way your negotiations always go. Last year, we fought over an $80,000 replacement contract in cars, and we've got probably 2 or 3 cars that are going to be in excess of that this year. We already know that they're coming up. Car prices aren't going down. We have a significant number of unpaved roads in our community. Every year, the Public Works comes back and says, oh, we've got flooding on this particular road and we need to do this particular infrastructure. No culverts. So to say that we have a plan for infrastructure is stretching it in my mind, because I haven't seen a plan for putting in general culverts or finishing the road pavement in any fast way. In fact, those roads that have been budgeted, for instance, the Depot Road, Roberts, and the other road in front of me, which was on the construction project for this year, still isn't paved. Now, I understand that there were extenuating circumstances. I'm not blaming that. But if we had a significant amount of money, we could start getting ahead of the issue rather than waiting until midsummer, issuing the contracts, and then discover that we've got more weather problems. Oh yes, I haven't even got to some of the bigger ones yet. We have an unfinished depot project. We moved the depot. It's really great. Now it's off in the middle of nowhere, where, again, the trains now continue to block that. Why? Because we don't have enough funding, or we don't have the planning, or the work isn't done to really complete it so that we can use it next summer. Oh yes, we still have drainage problems. And you know what is really interesting is we really don't have any streetlights. In fact, in order to protect our children in our particular development, one of the other council members basically through his own efforts put up his own street lights so we can actually have kids walk safely to and from the bus on what is now a connector. This should have been done under the city budget, but we don't have a plan. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this. I never have been able to. Although, as I said to begin with, I love WASI. It is a good program. It serves our seniors. For a specific need, if an organization was to come up with something, I may consider it if it if it was to be facilitating a general benefit to the community. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Several things. One is whether this gets voted up or down is not as big a question as some of the comments that's been made from the audience and from up here that implies to the public that we are only considering 3 organizations for this money. That is an incorrect statement. And no organization is being considered, at least from my seat, to get $100,000 or $5 or whatever. So I don't mind having a exciting discussion, but let's stick with the facts. Those 3 organizations may have asked for money, but they are not on the list. Everybody on that list is available. Now, maybe we didn't do a good enough job advertising so everybody knew about it. That's a fault of ours and the administration for not doing that, and we need to improve on that. The next thing is comments made to insinuate that we intentionally ignored projects, that we intentionally did things illegally, unethical, caused me some concern as to whether they should die or not, because we even had statements from up here accusing each other of doing illegal and unethical things. That is a big concern. Those kind of statements that's made without facts tear our city apart. It tears our family apart. And this ordinance appear to be tearing the city apart right now. The people who are testifying, you have the right to testify, but you need to testify honestly and with good intentions. And right now, we have taken things and we are adding apples and oranges into the same box and trying to prove a point. The budget to deal with roads, that is dealt with. You gotta have money, but you also gotta have contracts, and you gotta have time, and you gotta have the materials and stuff. So you just can't say we're gonna pave every road in Wasilla next summer. It won't happen. Not enough contractors and not enough material to do it. So the implication I'm hearing is that those things should be done, but we're refusing to do them. We're refusing to pay police. We're refusing to manage police. We're refusing to manage the Menard Center. Those who have been to many city council members know that the director of the Menard Center, it does have a plan to take care of that place. And he has come with us with a budget in the past, and I'm sure he will again this time. All those things are necessary. All those things are good. They should be addressed. And we as citizens should address those things and make sure the city council and administration is addressing those things. But don't mix apples and oranges, and don't impugn someone's reputation without facts. And don't impugn the directors over here on the side that they're not taking care of their departments, because they are. There's not one employee anywhere in the world wouldn't like a raise tomorrow. But is the police department paying a fair salary? Are they doing it the proper way? Are they bringing it before the negotiations and everything being done in good faith? And to imply that that's not being done is not a good thing for the city council or for the Wasilla family. So whatever happened tonight, and again, I was the one who submitted the motion for committee, but right now, after the last 3 meetings, the family dysfunction that has resulted out of this and the dysfunction among the city council itself has caused me some strong concerns. I think these charities, a lot of charities do need help. And I hope if a charity were to get money, that they would spread it among as many people across Wasilla as possible. That's what I got the intent from the people who was asking for money, not for one special small group or one special project, but to help citizens across. And what I'm hearing from the people I've talked to, they want to help our future. And that includes kids, but it also includes older adults, and it includes other projects, including mental health. The lady who came up and testified about the dog thing. If you've never been stressed out and not knowing what's going to happen, having some kind of relief valve to calm you down and so you can get back on track is worth billions, not 400,000. Anyone who has been in those kind of situations in the military and stuff, seeing someone whose life is torn apart and figuring out a way to calm them down is worth a lot of money. So maybe the best thing is for this motion to pass, and maybe if everybody is testifying in good spirit and from the heart, maybe this will get us back to being a family and moving forward in Wasilla. But I hope the people who are testifying against this and want to kill this is also willing to go into their personal pockets and make sure 150 organizations are taken care of. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor, thank you, Simon, and thank you for everyone for coming. And there were things said about even with the criteria we're going to be asking on the application. And the reason people haven't heard about this yet, it hasn't been done. We have not advertised it. Yes, the application has been gone through. It has not been released. In your last meeting's packet, there was the grant policy. It had a lot of the criteria and the eligibility requirements. And you know, we had people stating, oh, we don't have any, you're just gonna give all this money. No, it's very stringent. And I ran the MTA Foundation meetings and committee, and it was big, and you know, we gave away money every month. And we already decided, we're not gonna be in the grant business. The city is not. This is a one-time thing. But these criteria is a lot stricter than the MTA Foundation ever was. So I did want to say that. And also when it comes to a street light, like Mr. Johnson, we live on a corner that is a bus stop, and there was no street light. We asked the city for a street light. I was not on the council at the time, and we got a street light pretty darn quick. So maybe you should ask. And anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, fellow council members, for your opinions, and more importantly, thanks to everybody that's here tonight and has talked about this, not just tonight, but through phone calls and through previous meetings to make things happen. So the motion on the floor is to postpone this indefinitely, which essentially takes it off the agenda for the next, for a while. It can be brought back up after some rethinking. So it's not actually killing it, it's just not killing off the program, it's killing off this particular ordinance and the timing behind this particular ordinance. And like Mr. Johnson, I have a philosophical issue with handing taxpayer money to nonprofits. We have nonprofits that do great work. I'm a big supporter of WASI. I go there once or twice a week, talk to people. They do great things and are doing a wonderful job and have done a wonderful job over the years. I believe it was Carol, was that right, with the dogs? Wonderful organization doing great things. There are many nonprofits throughout the city, and I think there's almost 6,000 nonprofits in the state that do great work, that are able to corral funds, time of their directors and people that are passionate about it, and talents and the funding, and are able to make things happen. There are many nonprofits that are not able to do that and end up closing their doors because the passion isn't there and the community support isn't there. But the important word there is community support, not support of the government, but support of the community. And just like I use Pick, Click, Give, usually to give at least 10% of my dividend to local charities, as well as buying a pie for Pie It Forward, buying a fundraiser ticket from I think it was the Wasilla Football Club. I mean, we all do that, and we all choose which charities we support individually, and teams and organizations we support individually, and we make that happen. And we make that happen as a community. We don't make that happen as a government. That's not the function of government. The function of government, in the case of nonprofits, is to come up with policies that are friendly to nonprofits and that benefit nonprofits, not to provide funding to benefit individual nonprofits. This essentially a law-making body up here. We can make policies which are friendly to nonprofits. For instance, we talk about, I think Ann Kilkitty talked about taxes and the extra 0.5% that was added on after the police department was completed. What does that money go for? Well, that's money that's paid for by everybody that goes to support the operation of government. And if the operation of government is to support nonprofits, then I don't think we are living up to what the citizens expected when we said we wanted that extra 0.5%. For instance, I did ask our finance director, Ms. Miller, to provide me a summary of sales taxes paid this calendar year, and it's about $17,200,000 paid this year, or about $1.91 million per month collected in sales tax. So if we wanted to provide everybody some relief, we could cut that extra 0.5% sales tax off of there. Even if we just did it for a month, it'd come out, you'd still be collecting $1.5 million a month. And that would be about $400,000, which is the same amount of money that we're talking about here. So there are ways to benefit everyone from a government standpoint, and to keep government reined in to doing what it's supposed to do without handing out checks to nonprofits or other things. We've supported WASI in the past. We purchased or helped purchase a van. I think it was $80,000 as I recall. It was a one-time purchase. It wasn't done through a grants program. We didn't have to appoint a committee that will go in and bypass the code to make that happen. There was an absolute need there, and we went in and we talked about that need, and we solved that need and got it done. But in this case, on June 27th of this year, there was a grants policy committee, and that's the name of it, a grants policy committee which was formed, which would then bring back a policy in 90 days. So they brought back a policy which bypassed the city code, but on July 11th, so the next...
Point of order. That's not correct, Mr. Graham.
That is exactly correct. We had that discussion at the last meeting.
Could we have the attorney please say, we worked really hard on that, and what you're saying is...
I'm not disputing that you worked really hard on that, but...
Mr. Graham.
You're not bypassing.
Now, how do you rule, Madam Mayor, on the point of order?
Colleen,
Yes, ma'am.
and then the
What is
attorney.
being stated is incorrect, and I would like for the attorney to please
Correct. I mean,
repeat what we've said previously on this proposal.
there was an ordinance that complied with the code. It did not bypass the code. Council had adopted an ordinance to amend the code because in the past there had been grants given on a regular basis without compliance with the code in a sense, and I don't mean that in a legal sense. There were grants given that were spot grants of funds in the past, and so the goal of the ordinance was to ensure that any award of funding in the form of a grant by council complied with the code and was specified in the code. So just to be clear, and I'm not sure, when you said bypass, I don't think you were implying it was a violation.
I was not implying a violation.
What Councilmember Sullivan Leonard is saying is that by bypass, to the extent we're implying that the council did not comply with its code, it absolutely complied with it.
Thank you.
May I continue, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilperson Sullivan Leonard, for your concern. However, the code was bypassed, as was mentioned earlier. It was, new wording was inserted, so that essentially goes around the code without setting the code aside. So the code is still intact, but for this one particular purpose, we don't have to follow the code. So then, as I was saying before I was interrupted, on July 11th, because the council had questions about the Grants Policy Committee, on item 7.3, Grants Policy Committee clarification, it says, after discussion, it was the consensus of the council for the committee to create a policy for one-time, non-recurring grant programs. Not to create a committee to establish grants, to review grants, it was to create a policy. And then somehow from that point forward, now we have a committee, unappointed committee, whose job is to review the grants and decide who gets the grants. As Mayor Ruprecht pointed out, we've got the cart ahead of the horse. And even though there is a timeline associated with this, which was through an IM, through an informational memorandum, not through any sort of policy of the council, it was just, this is kind of what we're doing. It says we want to give these grants out this year. There's no requirement to do that. So Councilperson Rubeo is exactly correct. This ordinance needs to be postponed indefinitely, needs to be rethought, particularly the timeline, the formation of the committee, who's going to do this. Is it appropriate to bypass the budgetary process where Deputy Administrator Nygaard says, well, I'd like to go to this economic development conference, and we say, no, that's too expensive. Public Works Director comes and says, well, I want to fix these potholes, and we say, no, not this year, can you wait a couple of years? Joan Miller says, well, we need new tax software, and we say, well, we're doing okay now, let's wait a couple of years. And then to come up in the middle of the year and say, well, let's take $500,000 that was unbudgeted throughout the budget process and do that. If the council wants to include grant money, be it one-time grant money, be it annual grant money, in the budgetary process, I would fully support that discussion, but I can't support it in the middle of the year, because it is kind of bypassing years and years and years of history and experience that we have and that we have applied in the past and has worked so well. And I also cannot, just in general, support using taxpayer money, which is exactly what we're doing, to support individual organizations in general as opposed to specific needs. So I would ask the council to vote with Councilperson Rubeo and vote to postpone this indefinitely. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there further discussion? City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I just want to...
Excuse me, Holly, hold that closer.
Sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Fantastic.
I just want to make sure that the record is clear, because with whatever the council decides, which is a policy-based decision, an appropriate motion, and lawful, statements by council members that suggest that the council or the ordinance has conducted itself unlawfully are not appropriate and not accurate, and I think it's very important that the record reflects that. So I'm just going to state for the record a couple points. One, your code provision has very specific criteria for when you're going to give a grant. So giving a grant, even as a one-time payment, should follow your code. The provision that was added to it appropriately with an ordinance and a public hearing and introduction process. The next step, the creation of the grant and the formation of the committee, was also done in compliance. The ordinance that brought forward the program had the criteria incorporated into it. So the criteria for awarding the grant was included in that ordinance. So while there was additional features that would be in your application, the criteria, which is, and Councilmember Graham's correct, that criteria needs to be in the ordinance, and it was. On another point, any advertisement or notice or publication regarding the program would have been premature and inappropriate until the passage of tonight's ordinance, because there was not an appropriated amount for the program. So it would have been, you didn't have anything to advertise in that sense. So it's very appropriate for a municipality to wait until council has actually issued their determination regarding a program before they advertise that program to the public. So I just want to set those few criteria straight. So whichever direction you go, it's a lawful program, also a lawful motion. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, City Attorney. And to the citizens who testified for and against the ordinance, I hope you hold me accountable to do what you want, but also hold me accountable for giving out the facts. And words matter, and words have meaning, and words have power. And I hope you will hold my feet accountable if I get up here and give information that implies something that is incorrect. That is something that you voted us in, and you expect us to have ethics and respect for the law and respect for one another. So don't just ask me to vote for something you want, but ask me to be an ethical councilman and be careful what I say. And the same thing for people testifying. To the best of your ability, try to use facts and not say things that implies a lot of things, because words mean a lot of different things to people. And again, the last 3 meetings I've heard things that really affects us. So thank you for your time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Colleen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. As chairman of the community grant program, I would have liked to have had maybe just a hint that you were going to bring this forward, Rubeo, so I'm not blindsided here at the table, which I feel I am, and I don't appreciate that. So in the future, if we can communicate maybe a little bit clearer on what the intentions are from council, because June, July, August, our committee has been working towards what council gave us as a directive to utilize the offset from CARES Act funds to put towards those that are most vulnerable in our community. It says it right there in the CARES grant program. The mission is to help those that are the most vulnerable in our community. whether it's seniors, veterans, whatever. So, you know, obviously, this is not going to pass tonight. Our grant program and committee will come to a halt at the end of December. And I cannot imagine that anyone's going to bring forward any grant requests come budget season. So tonight this ends, and that's just the way it is. I would appreciate if people would bring some truth to the table. I know it's political season for many, and I know there's elections coming up in November, but to profess untruths really is just degrading of our council at this table, and it's not fair to our people in the audience and to our Wasilla residents. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Mayor? So definitely don't take it personal when someone has a change, when someone has a change of heart. Call it growing pains, call it just following what you believe. And so I'm not picking sides, I'm just doing what I think is right at this point. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, my fellow council members. To think that this has somehow become some sort of a personal or political issue, and that people are implying that the law was broken, I haven't heard that from any of the council members. For people to, you can laugh whatever you want, Colleen, but that's not true. What I see before me is I see what says we appoint a grant policy committee, not a community grants committee, but a grant policy committee to bring forward a grant policy, not to bring forward, you know, not to stay in.
Call the question.
No, you may not, because you do not have the floor. Thank you for asking.
No doubt.
So the Grant Policy Committee was a great thing. It brought things forward. It decided to do things differently than the code said we should do things. Put forward essentially a temporary code which would expire after the granting of these grants, or after the disbursement of these grants. But that doesn't mean that anything was illegal. That doesn't mean anything. The word bypass just means to go around. It doesn't imply anything illegal or unethical. It just means that we're, in this case, just disregarding dozens of years of history and experience that the city has. And so for folks that got their feathers ruffled, well, I apologize to you, but I'm not changing my position. Thank you.
Call for the question.
Thank you.
Second that.
Council, are you ready for the question?
Yes.
Yep. The question is, shall ordinance serial number 2233 be postponed indefinitely? Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
No.
Councilmember Graham.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Velock.
No.
Councilmember Rubeo.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, the motion to postpone indefinitely ordinance serial number 2233 passes with council members Graham, Johnson, Brown, and Rubio in support. Council members Sullivan Leonard and Velock opposed. So again, the effect of this motion was to kill the main motion without having to take a vote on it. So I believe we are now at ordinance serial number 2234.
Yeah. 2035. 2034.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the title of the second ordinance scheduled for public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's ordinance serial number 2234, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by appropriating $853,150 from the water fund balance for repairs to the Spruce and East Susitna water towers resulting from the January 2022 windstorm.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2234 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name.
Good evening again, Vern Rupright, Wasilla resident for many, many years. I say pass this ordinance you're talking about right here, because that is the function of government. Fix up those water towers. It's part of the deep infrastructure of the city, and I urge you to pass that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify?
Madam Mayor, Council, Mark Ewing, Wasilla. These are the type of things we need to keep our finger on. I looked up at the tower today and it was a different color. Did the insulation blow off of it or what? I don't know. But we definitely need to protect our water system. It cost us enough to put it up. And so I'm all for this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2234?
Madam Mayor?
Close the public hearing.
Yes, sorry. Pauline?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move ordinance serial number 2234, please.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Velock, second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Velock to adopt ordinance serial number 2234. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, we have your director go ahead and give a quick overview of this, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you'll recall, there was a severe windstorm in January 2022. The cladding and insulation was blown off of several water towers. That's why they look different today. The rest of the insulation has been removed. By approving this ordinance, it will allow those funds to be spent to repair those water towers, to rebuild them, not just to their existing state, but to improve them, because we are working with FEMA to regain some of this expense through a program that also expects us to improve its resiliency. So there have been many questions from the public about building it back better, and that is one of the goals with these projects, are to protect our infrastructure from future worse storms. So this money will be spent to do those repairs, and then there is a plan to receive some funding back from FEMA, and there's a plan to cover whatever else is necessary through the insurance monies available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Johnson?
Madam Mayor? Yes, just a quick question. In actually going through the package, I came to a question is, okay, we have the funds request for $853,150. We have correspondence with HDL for the work. So is this work actually firm fixed price work, or can we expect that HDL and other consultants will come back with additional funds needed?
Through the mayor, some of the agreements are firm fixed. Some of them are cost estimates based on our consultants to have contractors complete the work. So these are the working documents that we have to proceed with repairs, as well as meeting FEMA's documentation requirements to receive repayment for our repairs.
So, Madam Mayor, to Director Shaw, I noticed that you're putting in a 30% contingency. Is that correct?
Correct. For bidding purposes, with unknown impacts due to inflation and just the current bidding climate, we need to have some buffer to have a safe cushion for bidding.
That's undoubtedly safe. That seems to me, from an engineering perspective, to be awful liberal in terms of my contingency. If I was to develop a project for my company, I certainly wouldn't be asking for 30% contingency. Is there any way we can do better than that? I mean, that's like giving them almost a free check.
Through the chair, I will definitely look into that, but I don't believe that we're outside of the expected norms in this bidding climate. But the fees will be based on agreed costs. There won't be any disagreed cost escalations.
Mainly, the reason that I'm making this comment is this is a public forum, so we're actually telling the public and those bidding that we actually have that contingency built in, and hence, please ask for it because it's in our budget. So that's why I was thinking that if you put a very high number like that in there, you're telling them, yeah, go ahead and bid that because it's in the budget and we can get it. It just doesn't seem to me, as an engineer, to be the most prudent way of doing this contract bidding. I mean, I certainly would not do that for my company. My company, I would ask them for a firm fixed price, and if they come back with a number which is higher than what my particular budget was, then I'd come back and say, well, okay, we'll amend my budget, rather than say, oh, I've got a 30% contingency there.
Through the mayor, my professional experience is that you need to budget for project contingencies. When you have low bids, you have contractors competing against each other, and that leads to typically the best price that you can expect. So we would be expecting low bid prices on all the work that we can bid that way through the code, and we would expect to be receiving the best price with multiple bidders.
Just questioning. I want the best dollar that I can for our community.
Is there any further discussion?
Madam Mayor, Councilman
Brown.
Brown, could the Finance Department address this?
Yes, I'd like to just make a couple notations. You may recall several pieces of legislation coming back to you regarding the Hurley Circle, and that was largely due to the fact that the cost of the lowest bidder was higher than anticipated. And so here we are moving into winter, we need insulation, siding, and each time we come back with different appropriations, it modifies our timeline. I know with Hurley Circle, the Public Works Department not only came forward with additional legislation, but then also ultimately had to work with the client to modify scope just to get, to meet their deadline. So, and I think they had a reasonable, engineer's contingency. So this is really, a spec on it. It's not the RFP process. So that's all I think I'd like to share.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote on adoption of ordinance serial number 2234.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Graham?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Velock?
Yes.
Councilmember Rubeo?
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan Leonard?
Yes.
The motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2234 passes unanimously with Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, Graham, Johnson, Brown, Velock, and Rubio in support.
Madam Clerk, please read the title of third and final ordinance scheduled for public hearing this evening.
Thank you. Ordinance serial number 2235, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by appropriating $50,000 from the water fund balance for the Iditarod Old School Site, 2 well pumps, and flow analysis.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2235 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Seeing no one, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2235?
So moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Councilman Brown, second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Brown to adopt ordinance serial number 2235. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you. Just a quick question for our Public Works Director. Mr. Shaw, will the addition of these wells to our water supply system kind of negate the need for, we've been looking for water for a long time. Is this going to kind of slow that looking process down, or is this something that's just going to help us out for a little while, but we need to continue to be aggressively looking for new sources of water?
Through the mayor, this will help. It will not meet all of our needs. We will continue to look for more water supply and add more water towers. So these are useful pieces of infrastructure that exist. This is a cost-effective way to restart them, to add to our water supply, but it will not meet the complete need for growth. Wasilla is growing by leaps and bounds. We will continue to look for new water sources, but this is a very cost-effective way to slow, at least for a time, our water issues.
Great, thank you.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none? Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Persons to be heard. We are now at persons to be heard, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. The first person is Mr. Stearns.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stearns. I'm the Senior Ambassador for the Wasilla Area Seniors Incorporated. We are number one again. They voted us Best of Alaska for the 9th, I might add, straight year, and we are number one. In front of you, you have two sheets. The first one that I'd like to address is the My Oh My, It's Pie. That's our annual fundraiser, fall fundraiser. We're selling pies. We have an auction that's going to be starting on the 5th of November. It will go through the 18th. And this, as you know our auctions, and you've seen our auctions in the past, you know that there's some really great things there. And so we would like you to get involved and bid. We'd also like you to buy some pies, or if you want to, you can even sponsor some of our pies. But this is the way that we make money. And so the things that we do with this is feed our community. Okay, we feed seniors. You see our vehicles going all through Wasilla and points north. And so this is how we do it. Our kitchen puts out 500 meals a day. That's for the people, congregates, and the ones that we send out each day with our Miles for Meals program. Then, on the 5th of November, it's a Saturday, we are going to have our craft fair. That's this one right here. And it's our Wassy Holiday Craft Fair. We still have tables available, I believe, and you can call Kim at 907-206-8803, and she can fill you in on this. But this is a great way for you to start your holiday shopping and help seniors in the best way there. And then the other thing that is exciting right now is that we're putting in our paperwork for Willow House 2. And so we're hoping that they're going to fund us, and then we're hoping in spring we're going to break ground on Willow House 2. Why is that important? Because we need housing in the valley. We need housing in Wasilla. And this will be another housing project for us. That's another one of those things that WASI does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stearns. Brenda Sheldon. I think Brenda's left. And Kilkenny.
Good evening again, Council. My name is Ann Kilkenny. Just want to touch on a few things. The last time I was here, there was a presentation by the State Department of Transportation about the plans for the couplet and other upgrades and things they're doing in the city. And I commented on what I consider a very unsafe proposal, which is to have diagonal parking on the block right across the street from the post office. And I know this is not a question and answer period, but I hope that if you share my concern, that you're pursuing that. It comes from the city, what we want done on Main Street. So you have got to tell them. Secondly, on the same kind of issue, I believe it was Mr. Johnson, when I was here, who said to the state, oh, the crossing at the railroad tracks is horrible, and if you guys wait till you upgrade things, it won't last. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, because it's much better. They were listening. And so, see, you guys, it does matter what you do and what you say. It can make a difference. I was listening to the NEVI presentation and noticing that there's a 20% local match. I don't know, but that's something that you maybe should be thinking about. Do we want a charging station here at the city? How are we going to come up with the local match? Listening to the nonprofits talking, and I was here. I came here and I begged for money for Wazi. I've done this. I understand the generous and the desire to, the good that they do and the desire to do good things in our community. But maybe there's another way that the council can support nonprofits. Maybe in conjunction with Iditarod days, while people still have their PFD applications and haven't completed Live yet, or maybe in conjunction with the 4th of July festivities that we have, we could invite all these nonprofits to set up booths and have one gigantic nonprofit fair day for raising money and signing people up for volunteering and I don't know, but something to support some of these organizations. And the final thing is, it's too late.
Burn report.
Right, city resident. No tongue lashing from me. Has anybody here volunteered for Wazi to drive Meals on Wheels on their time? Oh, only me, the singer, former mayor? Oh, another former mayor. Well, that's the way you can help. A lot of us are involved with a lot of nonprofits. I'm a life member of the VFW. We were always involved in dealing with those kind of things. It's a very viable organization. I think Mr. Graham is a member, more active now than I am. I've outgrown the wild Friday nights over there. Thank you very much. But there's a lot more that can be done. You know, when it comes to food banks, there is a desperate need. I'm retired and I'm watching those dollars just stretch further and further like a rubber band ready to pop, just on the food costs alone. There's a lot of hungry people out here on these streets, and everyone, and I know you can't give to the church directly, but you can give kind of money to church food banks. That's not prohibitive. I don't believe what's one bit at all. So, I mean, think about it. We all know what these costs are. A lot of people here got pretty good retirements going on, I'm sure. We can afford to get by. But God forbid that you have family crisis and emergencies. I get calls from my oldest daughter and a few others that I've supported in the past going, Dad, do I have some extra money? I mean, we all have to face these things. That's what part of living is. But it doesn't hurt to just, at the Thanksgiving and Christmas time of year, to get more involved doing that individually. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Christopher George.
Christopher George, Wasilla resident. Councilmember Graham brought up something earlier that caused a point of contention amongst everyone, and it was in regard to the code, Wasilla Municipal Code regarding grants. And subsection A of that lists 13 conditions that a grantee must follow at a minimum. However, subsection C, that was just recently amended, which permits the non-reoccurring grants, does include a provision that states a grant program under this section need not apply the grant conditions, those 13 conditions, in subsection 8. I believe that was what was originally intended by skirting the requirements of the code, is that the code actually permits those things to be loosened. Additionally, I am in favor of grants and things like that. And as Mr. Brown pointed out earlier, that there is apples and oranges. The budget and other monies for grants and things come from separate pots, or they are allocated in separate ways. So there is a difference there. But I believe if the council gets together and is very transparent about the city budget, how things are being spent, and how much extra money there is involved, that if it was brought up to a referendum for the population of Wasilla to vote on as a whole, as suggested by Mr. Johnson, that it would sit easier with the people of Wasilla, that they can see that our local government has thoughtfully budgeted appropriately, is seeing to the needs of the city, and also contributing to nonprofits which provide services to members of the city. So I am personally in favor of the grant program if there is a longer thought out window where it is very clear, these are the people who qualify, these are the qualifications, and this is how you go about it, so that it's open and fair and available to everybody without a short 6-week notice as was previously set up until it was postponed. So I hope that we can, in the near future, sometime next year, pick this back up and be able to contribute to our nonprofits that do support our community so much. Thank you.
Mark Ewing.
Mark Ewing, Wasilla. Mr. Johnson, welcome to the realm of government spending and contracts. When we did the sports complex, it was, oh, by the way, do you want handles for those sinks? Kerching, kerching. 30% is an ungodly amount. Mr. Brown, I want to thank you, sir, for your wisdom. You know, he talked about, and I'm going to bring it up, somebody saying something out of context and not giving you the truth. And that was a city employee, Mary Robinson, who so diligently reminded us of the 2007 vote that was unanimous to give WASI some money because they were going to shut their doors. Mr. Menard, thank you. There's a difference between shut your doors and a need and a want. Ann Kilkenny, Diane Woodruff, Mayor Keller. I never got along with any of them. But this is one thing where we came together on. It should mean something. I want to thank you for coming, Ann. Diane, thank you. And Mayor Keller. One time she threatened to put me in timeout. 1982, for those of you who were here, we had a severe snowstorm. We had snowdrifts 35 feet tall on top of the Alaska Railroad in a few places. National Guard was called in to get us out. We don't know if we'll have one of those years again, and if we do, I don't think there's enough money in reserve to help with the snow removal that we had to do that year. So it's always good to have money in the bank. Colleen Leonard, how dare you suggest to Ms. Rubeo violate the Open Meetings Law Act by contacting you and letting you know that she was going to pull an item. You already had 2 council members on the committee. She'd have made the 3rd one. That would have been a violation of the AML. First thing you're taught at the AML is violations of the Open Meeting Law Act. Any violation then becomes possible litigation against the city, which just makes money for the attorney. I think the only one that's been making money all along is her. And I'd like to thank Diane Woodruff for years ago limiting the council's salary to $500 instead of X amount of meeting. And I just want to warn you that Wasilla is not a legacy town. Jeb Bush doesn't live here, and George wasn't mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I am probably gonna butcher this first name. Elspeth Wooden. Diane Keller.
Thank you, Council. My name is Diane Keller. I live in the city. Tonight I want to say a special thanks to all the veterans that live in Wasilla, that live in Alaska. Most especially, I'd like to thank those that were with the Alaska Territorial Guard, because without them, who knows what language we could be speaking today. I would also ask that you guys consider moving your meeting back to 7 o'clock start date so that the public can get their dinner and then come here and not be hangry. It was always at 7 o'clock when I was mayor. I don't know why it got changed to 6, but it's definitely not accommodating to the public. So I would ask council to please consider moving the meetings starting at 7 o'clock. I also wanted to remind you, we did just lose a very special person, Mayor Burkottle. And Mayor Burkottle, in his obituaries, I found it very interesting what he said. Where's my note? He said, you gotta have public support. The public has to trust you in government, that you're gonna do what you say you are. And the first time you don't do that, you'll never get it again. And he was speaking about the public trust. So, Councilmember Rubeo, I want to thank you very much for what you did, because not only did you do this for tonight, but you did this for every person that's going to sit in that chair in the future, and you got the trust back from the people. So thank you very much for doing what you did. I would also ask you to repeal 2228, because I heard everyone sit up here and say, we don't want to be in the grant business. So if you really don't want to be in the grant business, I ask you to repeal 2228. And if we have a lot of CARES Act money left over, or however you want to put it, did you realize that the CDC has increased the air handling system requirements, and you could buy a bunch of new filters that would protect the staff and the public at the library, the police department, every other city building, if you feel that you have too much money? Were you also aware that you could buy CARES Act, you could buy and give away CARES Act boxes that would have sanitary supplies in them, thermometers, COVID testing kits, all of those kinds of things could have been done with the grant that you received. So there are lots of eligible things. We didn't need to take money from one place and then turn around and do something that is against code. And lastly, I would like to remind every council member and everyone in the administration that you are in violation of the ADA. Every single grant agreement that you sign, whether it be state or federal, indicates that you have to have a handicap accessible building. And by putting that sign out there that says we lock our doors except when we have a meeting is a violation. And you could jeopardize every single grant funding that you have by locking that front door. People cannot have access to the public office, the clerk's office. They are directed to go around up top and they face a set of stairs. What are they to do at that point? Just think about that while you're blacking out their handicap parking spots. Thank you. Thank you, Rubeo.
Danielle Bischoff.
Good evening, Danielle Bischoff, and thank you for hearing me again. I'm a resident of the greater Wasilla area, and I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I was a city employee, and I had the privilege to speak with all of you, and I greatly appreciate it. I've been watching these meetings, and I'm here tonight because we don't behave like this in Alaska. We treat each other with respect, and we do not make accusations that are unfounded. I have great respect for all of the former elected officials I have great respect for all of the people that have taken their time out tonight to be here. I am here with my child because I think that it is important that we act ethically, we uphold true words like you're saying, Mr. Brown, and that we act in accordance throughout our day. I know me personally, I will not vote for someone when I see behavior that does not represent that, because that's what I stand for. This council passed a beautiful code of ethics. You worked hard on it, very hard, and there was long discussion. And that was done with the support of a wonderful attorney as well. And I'm sorry, but I don't really appreciate it, negative comments against her, because she does work hard as well. Thank you for listening to all of the public input. Thank you for all of the hard work that you do. I sincerely appreciate it. And I respect your vote tonight, and I respect the process. I hope that we can proceed forward with public discourse and not feed into any sort of just hype that's out there. That's not our jobs. That's not how we represent our community. That's not who we are as Alaskans. It's never who we've been. That's not why I raised my daughter here. With that, I will take just a second to say, well, one thing, I respect the former Mayor Keller's advice for the 7 p.m. For me, that would be difficult because my kiddo, we're already past bedtime. So, pros and cons to each, absolutely. With my remaining time, I'd just like to acknowledge former Mayor Burt Cottle. Mayor Cottle and I did not agree on everything. I had the privilege to serve under him, and he always treated me with respect, and I treated him with respect. And we could have those differences of opinion, and we could discuss them. He treated me and my daughter in such a genuine form. I appreciate what he did for this city and what he did for this state. I will continue to follow his example and try to be a model in my community, to serve my community, no matter what my title is. I hope that we can all do the same. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Steve Menard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Steve Menard, Greater Wasilla area, out at Chirac Road, Menard Homestead. I'm a very emotional person. I'm very saddened today, right now, that 2 weeks ago we sat in here and one of the person from the council reminded us about how to play in a sandbox. And we must remember that we all take this job to be civil, to be kind, to be just. We know you're doing your best. And I am not perfect in any means. And I get emotional, and I let my emotions sometimes take the best of me also. But please remember to be civil up here. It reflects on our community, and your fellow council members have, just give them the dignity that everybody deserves. I wanted to comment on our former mayor who passed away. And in his words, there's few people you come across that are passionate about their community. And just like others have mentioned before, if you know Bert, he can come across kind of gruff. And there are times when you don't see eye to eye. But never once was I in question where his heart was for the betterment of this city. And rest in peace, my friend. and to the family. We're there for you. And hopefully one day we'll be able to see all each other again. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council at this time?
Diane Woodruff, city resident, and thank you, Mayor Ledford and council members for the second bite at the apple tonight. I'd like to especially thank Councilmember Johnson for his many thoughtful comments tonight. I really was sad I didn't get to meet you last time I was here, but I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments and Councilmember Graham's comments in particular regarding conservative principles of government doing what government does and leaving everybody else to do what they do. I think that that's something for all of us to keep in mind. I hear a lot of people running on being conservative these days, but I don't see a lot of it in the votes when that comes out. I'd also like to kind of note that one of the things that council duty taught me is that you kind of need to have a little bit of a thicker skin sometimes, and well, maybe we don't always parse things the way that we should or could. I think we need to not be too quick to take offense to our other council members, quite frankly. So while indeed, yeah, we need to be careful with our language, but please don't get too excited about it if somebody doesn't say things just exactly right. It's not necessarily meant as a diss, and I think, you know, when we talk about projects not being done and not being in good repair, it's because the city doesn't have all the funds. We don't have unlimited funds, and I think when people point that out, it's not meant as an insinuation of ill intent toward anybody. It's just a statement of fact. It's how it works. I would like to also note that, you know, there's some talking over people tonight, and that's always, I think, in bad form. Let people get out whatever it is they're going to get out. If you want to take objection to it, please do it later. And, you know, I appreciate the clerks and all the effort they do to try and make sure that everybody knows Robert's Rules of Order, but please, if you ever feel the need, I'm sure she'd be happy to help with a refresher for anybody that needs it. And I thank Councilmember Rubeo for thinking and changing maybe your mind a little bit here. I think the thing that was most disturbing to me tonight is the suggestion that someone should have checked with someone else before changing their mind at the table tonight. And I don't think there's any point in you having meetings if you're not going to come with an open mind, take into account what you hear, and then formulate your opinions instead of having that already done before you get here. So thank you for being open-minded and for using proper procedure for that. And with that, I think I'm done. Thanks.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to the council tonight? Hearing none, we are on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read title of items for approval under the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if I may, Council, I have one correction to offer to the body if they accept it on the October 10th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. It's on page 7 of the meeting minutes, item 10.2. It's the vote on ordinance serial number 2233, which was, the motion was to introduce and set for public hearing. The minutes before you reflect that that motion passed unanimously or with no objection. And in fact, it was a 4-1 vote. Councilmembers Sullivan, Leonard, Brown, Velock, and Rubeo in support. Councilmember Graham opposed, and Mr. Johnson was absent. So if there's no objection, I will make that correction in the minutes.
Madam Mayor, before she moves that, could we have a 5-minute break?
Yes. We'll take a 5-minute break.
It's in the budget, I can't get them to do it. So I'll go in.
I'll go with you. Like I said, I had no problem getting my street light.
We're back on the record at 8:53. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the items for approval under the consent agenda.
Okay, and just to be clear, everybody accepted my, my changes?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, we have regular meeting minutes of October 10th, 2022, as, I guess, as amended. Introductions recommended for public hearing on a next regular city council meeting, November 14th. That's ordinance serial number 2236, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by appropriating $240,000 from the sewer fund balance for replacement of the Cottonwood Creek Mall septic system. Two resolutions for approval. First is resolution serial number 2218, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Matsu YMCA for lease space in the Curtis D. Menard Memorial Sports Center in the amount of $7,200 for 8 months, beginning November 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, and the amount of $11,400 for 12 months, beginning July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Resolution serial number 2219, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Wasilla Youth Soccer for lease space in the Curtis D. Menard Memorial Sports Center in the amount of $5,600 for 8 months, beginning November 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, and $750 per month for 12 months, totaling $9,000 for July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. No action memorandums.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Second by Councilmember Velock.
It's been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Velock to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. There is no unfinished business, no new business. There is, so we move directly to communications. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the items under communication.
First is item number 2214, that's monthly financial reports for the period ending September 30th, 2022, to include the month-to-date expenditure report and disbursements greater than $10,000, the investment report, quarterly report of businesses receiving a penalty waiver for sales tax, and the auditor's report. We have two sets of commission meeting minutes. First is Planning Commission, October 11, 22, and Wasilla Landscape Standards Review Committee, October 10, 2022.
We are on to audience comments. It's a time for members of the public to share their views with council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Is there anyone present who would like to address the city council?
Vern Bright, city resident. I just want to belabor this meeting, but I don't really. I want to thank the staff for having to deal with all this. I know how tough that job is, and they're all hungry. And especially this lovely clerk of yours. Of course, Councilman, you signed up for the job because you said elect me. Same with the mayor. But I really do appreciate them all. They're very good. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Why'd you go out? This is the last chance. This is Ann Kilkenny, city resident. I was really super distressed at the turnout in our election. 4%. Madam Clerk, I really appreciated you sent out a notice to people that are signed up for various things through the website about the election. And I think that's something that the city ought to do more of. That we maybe should be spending some money on the local radio station, just announcing it's election day, or next Tuesday's election day, or democracy works when people participate. We really need better participation. I'm not saying that either of you guys shouldn't have been elected, but wouldn't it have been nicer if you'd gotten more than 2.5% or 4% of the vote? You know? So I would encourage you, to use the resources that you have already through the website to post more information about elections. I know people came to vote today and came here and didn't know because their voter tag says you voted you know, your voter card says you voted City of Wasilla. Well, not for early voting. There should be signs on all the doors saying where to go for early voting. There needs to be better handicap access at voting. I take my 97-year-old mother-in-law to go vote, and oh boy, you know, when we were voting at Wasilla Middle, that was really a challenge. It was a long walk. I want to thank the council for listening and considering the things that people say. I don't know if any of you knew May Carter, but she was the first woman magistrate in the state and a great Wasilla citizen. She would say, only a fool never changes their mind. So don't be afraid to change your mind. And Mr. Public Works, you know there's an abandoned well. Maybe we can get water out of it. Thank you, bye. Oh no, I have 27 seconds. You know, it's really a bummer for people in the audience to hear you guys complaining about each other. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Mark Ewing, and I think I still live in the city. Took me 4 minutes to get here tonight, 4 blocks away. Jamie, I wanted to thank you. I watched last council meeting on YouTube. Hell of a deal. I'd like to see eventually it get to the point where we can comment from home, maybe through Skype, some mechanism like that. You know, Jamie's done a hell of a job here as a deputy city clerk, and then over in Palmer under Lonnie. So I've worked with her here, over there, and here again. And I think she's one of the best damn clerks in the state. And she does things good. The other thing is, I'm not going to take a tongue lashing. When I sit here in this chair, it's like the mayor says, this isn't question and answer. I'm not going to take a tongue lashing from any city elected official. This is my time to talk. You get your time when I leave, okay? So please be respectful both ways. Again, thank you, Mr. Brown, for your wisdom. Mr. Graham, Ms. Rubeo, for having the courage to stand up tonight. And Mr. Johnson, I'm going to keep an eye on you. Make sure you keep an eye on the city funding. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diane Keller and I live in the city. I want to say thank you to all of the council members tonight. I heard actually good, fruitful discussion, and as an audience member, I want you to know how important that is to me, to hear you guys debate and discuss things, whether you agree with me or you disagree with me. In my humble opinion, that is your job as a council member, to talk these things through so the public can understand what your points of view are. So I want to thank you for that. I also, Glenda, you, at 3 meetings ago, I think it was, there was a transportation, somebody came and did a little thing, and you were on the committee for that, and they talked about its future planning, and they were asking for seed money to help with this plan. It was 2 meetings ago. But I heard, yeah, the MPO, and I didn't hear any mention of any motorized use allowed in that discussion at all. So as the mayor of Wasilla, we do support motorized vehicles in Wasilla. I would ask you to make note of that and bring that up at the next meeting to make sure that there are motorized users groups that are invited to the table, because I heard of all kinds of non-motorized groups that were being invited to the table, but I didn't hear not one single motorized use group. So I would ask that you would do that on our behalf. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was, if we're having problems with nonprofits, I mean, if nonprofits are having problems, I think that we could do things like work with the Small Business Administration to have the finance staff teach them classes about budgeting or reporting to their boards, how to give good reports to their boards, help them to collect the sales tax and remit the sales tax. Those are things that it would not only benefit nonprofits, but it would benefit for-profit businesses in our community. So I ask that you consider that. And the very last thing that I want to ask for is, I do again, heard everyone say that we should not be in the grant business. If you are gonna be in the grant business, just like all those grants that were referred to in my time and everybody else's time, they were done at the budget process. And they had to be defended at the budget process, which is the appropriate time for that to happen. People don't wanna have a discussion during the budget process because truly the city needs outweigh the wants of other agencies. So I would ask you to keep that in mind. There's, like I said, the road standards have been reduced since I was the mayor. I don't know who reduced them, but we should all have a culvert. When the city does road construction, they should be installing culverts because it's just gonna do nothing but wash out the road bed that you just paid good money to make. So I would ask that you, as a council, go back and look at those standards to make sure. I mean, I was always so proud. You could tell when you went down a road that was a joint city-borough road, you could physically see the difference because the city standards were much greater. So again, Rubeo, thank you very much. Thank you all for your discussion. And Jamie, kudos to you. I hired you and I'm so glad that I did. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to address the council at this time?
Steve Menard again, Greater Wasilla area. One of the real quick history lesson, and the reason why I got on the council or ran for council in '04 was because of Lake Lucille. And I grew up at the Cottles home, and we used to swim in there, and last time I swam in there, we get the itch factor. So sitting down with some of the old timers, I said, hey, what can we do? Don't have property there. They go, well, the dam hasn't been repaired since '42, and the civil engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers did it. DNR, they passed it off to DNR, DNR passed it off to Fish and Game, and I started the work on that, and through Mayor Keller, and then Vern took it across the finish line and got that thing fixed, and we fixed the dam. On top of that, we started mowing with Archie, and so whatever reason you got on this council, don't lose faith. It might not happen when you are physically sitting here, but each of you ran for a specific reason. And keep that passion. At this time, I'd like to bring up the bed tax. It's one of my pet peeves, and just remember that we do have hotels in the city of Wasilla. A lot of people don't know that we have a bed tax. We collect that money, the borough does. It started out under my father, it was a 70-30 split. It's been changed to, I think, an 80-20 split with the Matsu Visitors Bureau. That 20% is up for parks and rec improvements borough-wide. It almost never gets used and applied for. Please do your due diligence, follow that money trail, because that is, I won't say free money, but that is money out there that we can improve our city for lighting, for walkways, parks, etc. Thank you again. God bless.
Is there anyone else? Hearing none, we are now at Mayor Clerk Attorney comments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam.
I'm sorry, please keep your remarks limited to 3 minutes because it's already 9:08.
I just want to reconfirm with council members, you saw my email, Madam Mayor has called 3 special meetings Saturday, which is new for us, November 19th, 10 a.m. We'll adjourn by 4, and that's strategic planning presentations by departments. And then our normal goals and initiatives meetings will begin Wednesday, December 14th, 6 o'clock here in Chambers. If needed, we'll continue to Thursday, December 15th, 6 o'clock, and finally Friday, December 16th. Again, sorry it's on a Friday night, but we've changed up our schedule this year due to AML is the week prior and then Christmas the following week. So that's all I have, council members. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Over the last couple of meetings, there was several comments made, and I wondered if I could ask your chief of police to address some of the things that was said by the police department. Last meeting, there was a comment made about pulling out in the traffic with the red lights.
Yes, through the mayor, or to Stephen Brown, through the mayor. One of the things that we have is our CAD system. I know that I was concerned about a comment that we had talked about potentially one of our officers using his lights to go through the intersection. I have not been able to find any evidence of that. However, there is a copious amounts of video. Each patrol car that we have here has video in their patrol cars, and when the lights are activated, it will activate the watch guard system, the video system. Going through the video that I've been able to get so far is that we have not been able to locate anybody circumventing any kind of traffic. However, with that, there is also that disclaimer is that just because they do not necessarily have their lights on, doesn't mean that they're not responding to a call, and they could have been there for a sense of urgency. But for that comment, there is nothing that supports that we are purposely circumventing the laws to get through the intersections to bypass what other motorists have to do.
Thanks, Chief, and that's what I wanted people to know, that there's systems that track what your officers are doing, so can be done, but it wouldn't be smart to be doing that.
No, it is discoverable, and there's definitely, there's no way to bypass that. We have foolproof, there's systems set in place to be able to retrieve that information if needed.
Thanks, Chief. And Madam Mayor, to the Menard Director, there was comments made about ill repair of sidewalks and stuff. Could you address that?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Brown. There are parts of the Menard Center where concrete has received some damage, either through plowing process, things like that. We took a cursory review. It's all going to be part of a bigger proposal coming to you, but at this time, there's nothing that would be considered unsafe or dangerous. Building's almost 19 plus years old, and we're looking at putting together just a nice plan to make sure we're back in nice new condition.
Thank you very much. And to the Public Works, Madam Mayor, again, a lot of comments, but I don't need an in-depth, but just an overview that you are tracking pavement, damage to pavement, and this is not something that's being ignored by Public Works.
Yes, through the mayor. Pavement drivability is very important to us. Our staff has been working very hard at fixing what they can. They did some paving on the last days of the asphalt plant being open. We were just waylaid by this year's weather, and we will be prepared to hit the paving season next spring as soon as possible, make up that ground, and meet our commitment to repair the damaged areas and get to the unpaved streets in the timeline that's laid out in the plan that we're working on.
And Madam Mayor, I ask those questions because people in TV land or radio land may not see who's working here, but I have full faith in your directors that they are watching these things, watching the departments, and doing what's in accordance and bringing it forth for, as you see some of the consent agendas, bringing forth requests to repair things as they bring them up. So we at the City Council, or as administration, is not ignoring city maintenance in progress. Thank you.
Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I do want to congratulate Councilmember Rubeo. Congratulations on the council, and also Nikki Velock, council member, back on the council. Appreciate you guys here very much. I do want to make a few comments, especially with regard to Mrs. Kilkenny, who had brought this up previously with regard to the parking issue. My ears really perked up when you had brought it up prior. I thought about how Anchorage is set up with how they have specific parking and looked at that in comparison to what our couplet is going to be. And I think you're very much right on. If we look at a different type of parking piece on there, I can't imagine how people are going to back out onto Main Street to try to get following the one-way flow of traffic, correct? So anyway, I'm going to look at that, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. And Mrs. Kilkenny, I haven't seen you for a long time, but I appreciate you being here. And your comments about the percentage of people voting was again right on. I think we had 4.8% turnout, which I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, when somebody calls and says, hey, by the way, did you win your race? And yeah, I think I got, maybe 60%. Oh, how many votes is that? Oh, about 300. So, so anyway, if you have suggestions on how we can help get the vote out, get people motivated to come vote, honestly, I would love to hear your comments or anyone else's comments on that. So anyway, that's it for tonight, and thank you everybody for all your work tonight. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Velock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to thank everyone, but they're pretty much gone for coming. Yeah, and it was good tonight, We're going to have these kind of nights, and that's okay. It's all good. And I did want to express my sadness and heavy heart for Bert Connell. I probably wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Bert, because he did recruit me to the City Planning Commission, and then I ran for this seat. But yeah, he was a great mentor, and he taught me a lot about the city. He took me places that I wouldn't have gone on my own, and I toured everything from the library to the Menard Center kitchen to the new police station. And he just was so excited about everything and made me excited, and he's going to be greatly missed.
Councilmember Johnson.
No comment, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Rubio.
I'm gonna let everyone go home, no comment.
Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm not gonna let everybody go home, but I'll make it short. So,
remember 3 minutes.
3 minutes is a suggestion, Madam Mayor, not a policy. But tonight was a great meeting, because in the meeting there was a lot of passion was demonstrated. Passion from the audience members, passion from the staff, passion from the council members. And in the great tradition of Bert Cottle, who will be sorely, sorely missed, that's what makes politics work, is passion. Bert had a passion for this city. He had a passion for wherever he was working to try and do what he thought was right. And along the way, he ruffled a few feathers, but he never, put anybody on the list that I'm never going to talk to him again. He would always talk to anybody about anything and make things work. And he enjoyed expressing his passion and enjoyed listening to others express their passion as well. It can be kind of exasperating when my passion differs from yours, but passion is what makes us work here and what brings us back to the council every week. So to those that express that passion, great. And I hope that those of us that knew Bert and worked with Bert can work with the younger generation to help them generate passion. And when I say younger generation, that doesn't mean the 12 and 14-year-olds, even though that's important. It means those people that are at 25 to 35 that are getting into that period of their life when they actually can be very productive and very helpful to keeping government right-sized and keeping the city government on its right way. But so to Bert Cottle, thank you so very much, Bert, for your friendship over the years. I will miss you immensely, and this state is a much better place because you were here and because of your passion, and I hope we can generate that passion in others. And as far as one of the items, on the agenda tonight where we talked about indefinitely postponing the ordinance, all that does is that just kills the particular ordinance. That doesn't kill the idea. The idea is still out there. The idea is still being talked about. It just kills that particular ordinance, the specifics that went along with it. So for those of you that are concerned about grants and things like that, that doesn't mean it can't come back up again. Heck, it might come up next week. Who knows? But all it did was kill that particular ordinance and not the idea. We talked about, there was a lot of talk about WASI today. And WASI is a great organization, but I would like to remind everybody that before our next meeting, November the 5th, WASI has their craft fair, which is always a lot of fun. A lot of handmade stuff there, as well as a lot of vendors there. So please go out and support WASI. You can end up with some great stuff for your Christmas stockings or your home or for your gifts, as well as supporting a great organization as well. And I also wanted to mention that before our next meeting, the library's used book sale will be on the 12th, I think. Saturday, November 12th from 1 to 4. It's amazing the kind of treasures you can find at that used book sale for $5. Go out and take a look. It's $5 to fill up a bag. You don't have to fill up the bag. If you just find one book you want and you pay $5 for it, chances are you've saved $30 or $40. So please support the library by doing that as well. Also, it was mentioned, the clerk mentioned the AML happening next month for city council members. If you haven't attended, please attend. Even if you can only attend a couple of the sessions. I mean, it's a great opportunity to find out what other cities are doing, to find out what the leaders in the state are doing, and to move your ideas forward, or to figure out how to move your ideas forward, and to meet others that are in similar situations with you, so we don't not always reinventing the wheel. So AML is a great organization, and both myself and Nikki are on the board of AML, and we'd be happy to work with you to move forward. Now, Nikki will be terming off the board of AML this year, and typically we have taken the seat for what we call District D in AML, which is Palmer and Wasilla. Typically, Wasilla will hold it for 2 years, and then Palmer will hold it for 2 years. So we probably won't be filling that this year unless Palmer decides they don't want to fill it. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be well represented, whether we're on the board or not. But now we have particularly strong representation. So please show up and make that out there. And last pitch, early voting started today. You can go to the Division of Election building on Bogard Road and vote anytime between now and Election Day, which is November 8th. I don't think you can vote there on Election Day. You have to vote in a precinct on Election Day, and that voting will happen here. It was mentioned that we had 4.8% voter turnout. I think Councilperson Sullivan Leonard pointed that out. Boy, and that's terrible. That's really low, but it's been lower. But that's not a good thing. So I think it might be time for us to revisit the idea of moving our municipal election to November just to get some turnout. I'm guessing in this November's municipal election, we'll probably have 50% voter turnout. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's really, really important what's happening here, and so people will get out. So I was always a proponent of keeping it in October so that local issues and local candidates, could get the exposure that they needed. To be heard so people could make educated decisions, but now I'm not so sure about that. I think that might be something that we want to talk about in the future. To everybody that showed up tonight, thank you very much. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for hanging out till 9:30 in the evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. It's the mayor's time. Ms. Kilkenny, 4 weeks before the election, we start on the Mayor's Minute on the radio. I think there's 7 different stations that it's on. We start talking about the elections, and they play it, I think, every day on some of these stations. So that does get out there.
Go ahead.
Yes, please. The clerk will tell you.
So, as Madam Mayor said, we do the radio spots through her office. We do a direct mail to every registered voter that the city pays for. We do numerous ads in the Frontiersman. We did one this year for the first time in the People's Paper to expand. And then we also what am I forgetting? Oh, we push all of our articles and all of the information from our website, pushes all out to social media. Not only to the city's social media pages, but there's also a local Matsu elections, vote election, vote local to that page as well. So I am absolutely interested in any other ideas that people have. What I said the last meeting is I challenge every city voter. Help us. Go on, talk to your neighbors. Why aren't they voting? What are they interested? What are they not interested in? I think in some of our elections recently that have had particularly low turnouts, no offense to my candidates, but there's not a lot of candidate billboards. You're not seeing them on the Parks Highway like you see maybe for other races. They don't buy TV spots like some of the other more high-profile races. So, but again, I am open. I am passionate about elections. Anything that we can all do. We talk about this as a community. It's all of our issue. I'm open. Sounds like Councilmember Sullivan Leonard's open as a member of the body. We want to increase turnout. So whatever we can do.
And also on the parking on the street, we have a meeting. We're trying to put together a meeting for this week with DOT to address that very issue. So you have been heard, and we do take it to heart. When you do, let us know. So, and Diane, you keep asking me about the parking place over at the Menard Center. I had foot surgery on both feet back in March. There was complications. I'm still having complications. So me walking and getting around sometimes is very painful. And until I can get that resolved, that parking place will be there so that I can get in and out. And other than that, thank you all for being here. Oh, Diane, if you'd like to have a letter from my doctor, I'll see them Wednesday morning. I can provide that for you. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And with that, we are adjourned.
Someone without objection.